Yo, what's going on, everyone? It's Brian and Jim here with Drink a Beer and Play a Game, and we're doing kind of a little pre-intro here because we have Hannah Gohde with Naked Brewing Company on our podcast today, but we wanted to make sure we hit up all your Patreon questions, so we actually have that at the end of the audio and video. There's a timestamp below if you want to skip ahead to those, but we wanted to make sure we let you guys know we still got your questions in.
We didn't forget.
Yeah. So make sure, stay tuned for that. Either way, enjoy the rest of the episode. Hannah's
Cheers,
been a
guys.
great guest.
Yep.
Cheers. Yo, what's going on, everyone? It's Brian and Jim here with Drink a Beer and Play a Game, and welcome to another episode of the Power Hour.
Yes, welcome to episode 92, and we have a guest. We have a special guest, and we're actually branching out for once, getting away from all the video games as we normally do, harping in on that beer side of Drink a Beer and Play a Game, because we have the head brewer of the Naked Brewing Company with us tonight. Her name is Hannah Gohde, and she is joining us out of the kindness of her heart. Hannah, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
It's a rainy, crappy day. It's a Monday, and we're going to drink some pretty good beers because really excited to have you on.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So tonight we kind of coordinated something Jim and I very rarely do, but knowing that we had special beers from your brewery, we decided we were going to start with Way to My Heart. And, Jim and I, we usually give our very unexpert opinion on beers and talk about it and what we can expect or what you can taste, but we wanted to hear your side and have you walk us through the beer itself and maybe give us any stories behind the brewing process for this one.
Yeah, so Way to My Heart was actually a collaboration with the University of Sciences in Philadelphia. They have a brewing science program, and the department head, Dr. Farber, Matt, is a good friend of mine. I've gotten to know him over the years. And the yeast that was used to do this beer, so it's a cheesecake inspired sour ale with cherries, so like cherry cheesecake. The yeast that was used in this is super unique, and it was actually discovered by one of the brewing science program students a couple years ago. So as part of their curriculum, students are instructed to go out and culture yeast off of plants or objects, things that are outside. And then they bring it back into the lab and they grow it up, propagate it, and see if it is viable for fermenting beer. And a lot of times it's mediocre. It might work, might not work, might produce some weird flavors and whatever. And in this particular case, the yeast did ferment beer. And what's super unique about this is that it is a lactic acid producing yeast, but it doesn't have any bacteria in it. So normally when you are drinking a sour ale, whether it is a traditional long-term sour or a new age or kettle sour that you see at a lot of breweries, it's that sour component comes from the use of lactobacillus, which produces lactic acid. So lactobacillus is a bacteria. It naturally occurs like in our gut. It's a probiotic. But in terms of brewing, you want to avoid getting that lactobacillus into other beers because then you potentially get sour beers that are not intended to be sour. So it can be a little dicey for some breweries to use, but in the case of this yeast strain, it is super, super, super unique because, like I said, it is a lactic acid producing yeast strain. It was discovered on or cultured from a dogwood tree in a cemetery in West Philadelphia. So after a couple of years, the Brewing Sciences program ran all their bench trials, and they actually approached some yeast companies with it, and they hold a patent for it. And Lallemand, which is a commercial yeast company, holds the trademark now on it. So it's part of their Wild Brew series. It's the Philly sour yeast.
Nice.
So yeah, it's super unique. Fun fact. um, I was the first person that Matt approached about doing an official like U Sciences collab with this yeast. Now we're not the first brewery to use that yeast. The Larimer for sure uses it, and several other breweries have, and it's commercially available. So I know people all over the country have used it. Some Facebook groups that I'm part of have international members, and I know some of them have used it too. So. Not the first brewery to use it, but the first ones to actually collab with U Sciences, which I didn't know until partway through the brew day, and I'm glad Matt didn't tell me that because I was super nervous going into the day, even though Matt is my friend, and like we're like legit good friends. We talk about things not just beer related, but I was so terrified that because I didn't want to be an example of what not to do in one of his classes, right? So, so I was really nervous, but the day turned out wonderfully, and you know, Matt's just a really good person, and their whole program is awesome. So yeah.
I'll tell you right now, you telling me all that makes me think, why the hell did we waste our time going to school for mechanical engineering when we could have went to college for much more fun shit? Because
Yeah.
that sounds much better.
Right, right. Well, actually, so it's funny that you say that because so I have a master's degree in environmental science, and I've never done anything with it. I ended up in the I ended up in the beer industry. But and you know, maybe we'll end up touching on this a little bit later. But if I had known when I was trying to decide what I was going to do for the rest of my life at 16, you know, when you're like applying for college and visiting all these schools, if I had known that brewing beer was an option or even anything in that realm, I mean, that's just like, you know, it's just like mind blowing. But I didn't even know that that was a thing. So yeah, it's cool. There's definitely a lot of science that goes into it.
Oh, it's pretty amazing. I mean, yeah, people I think take for granted the work that goes into it because, you know, you see all these, buy your own, make your own brew kit at home and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, I think a lot of people do start off in your garage or just making a few simple barrels. And like you're saying, the science and once you scale it up, the amount of chemistry and everything else that goes into it, it is. I mean, Jim, do you remember the name of the brewery in Tennessee? It was Tennessee Brew Works. We were able to meet with the head brewer there, and she was a doctor of what, microbiology?
Something like that, yeah.
And she had written thesis, like it was amazing. And yeah, here's a doctorate like telling us about the molecular, and it was blowing our minds. We're like, what the hell? Like
we're just saying there going,
Yeah.
It's beyond impressive when you get to that level, and it sounds like
absolutely.
the fact that you got to collab, that's pretty damn amazing.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, first couple sips right off the bat, what really strikes me as crazy from all the sours I have is there's an immediate, like, almost creamy feel to this beer. And the cherry hits you, and the vanilla like just finishes it off. And it's not super tart. Like, there's the obvious sour tartness, but like that creaminess is something I would never expect to feel from like. And is that from that yeast you were telling us about?
So, so the way this beer actually came to be, so I got a text message from Matt one day, and he said, "Hey, I have this good bad idea, but I want it to be your good bad idea." And I was like, "Okay."
Let's go to a cemetery.
Yeah, he was like, "I want to brew a cheesecake inspired sour ale using the Philly yeast strain." And I go, "Okay." And he's like, "Really?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay. Cheesecake is my favorite food in the world, so not hard to convince me of that." He was like, "Oh, okay." So the reason why he had initially approached me, one, obviously because we were friends, but two, in his mind, the base style for this was going to be a cream ale, which is my favorite style of beer in the world. So
can we give a little plug for your Buck Naked Ale that we got as
Uh-huh.
well and just had.
Yeah. Yeah.
Super, yeah. I really, really enjoyed that one as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, we
Thank you.
drank that real quick.
Yeah.
That's kind of the point of that beer.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, cream ale is my favorite style. Jenny Cream is probably my favorite go-to, always in style beer for me. Unpopular as it may be for me to say that, I don't really care.
I was gonna say because I saw that when you did your interview with breweries in PA, they're buddies of ours on Twitter, and I saw Jenny Cream Ale isn't Genesee like in the cheap section and everything like that? Like that was the last thing I was expecting to see, but I was like,
Yep.
all right.
Yeah, I mean,
Brew the
it's
people?
it's just a really solid, good beer. It tastes like nostalgia and good times. So,
And once you mentioned Lion's Head, like especially for Brian and I, like that was our
yeah.
college beer.
Oh, yeah. Lion's Head, because for like $12, you get 24 beers and 24 puzzles.
That's fucking right.
Yeah.
Okay, can you answer me this? One question I always had, and people thought I was crazy. I love Lion's Head, but I do notice, especially with the regular lager, it almost has like a melted butter popcorn flavor. There's something, I don't know what that is, but like,
Yeah.
can you just like?
So I don't get it in Lion's Head all the time. But what you are tasting, and that is not just limited to Lion's Head. You can actually have that appear in any beer style. Most often you do see it come about in lagers though, and it is a fermentation byproduct. It's called diacetyl. Very low levels are acceptable in some beer styles, like an ESB. It's acceptable for a very, very low level of diacetyl to be present in that. But in general, that is a flaw and not something that you want in beer.
Oh,
So I'm not just crazy. There is
No.
a definite flavor. Okay, because that's what
Yeah.
like people would never hear. Like you said,
So what's even funnier about that is like movie theater butter popcorn is actually intentionally, it's made with diacetyl. Like that's a thing.
so it really is like
It's
that-
it's a component. Yeah. It's like a chemical component. Yeah.
I'm gonna take that as a win because too many people told me I was crazy. I was like, I
No.
swear to God, it tastes like
You're
that.
you're definitely not crazy. But here's the thing: is some people are very sensitive to diacetyl, and other people are not. So I'm pretty sensitive to diacetyl, but I actually get it as a mouthfeel first. It's like a very slick, but almost like your tongue is coated. Like again, if you think about movie theater butter popcorn,
Yeah.
like greasy.
yeah, but it's even more than that. It's almost like this waxy.
It like coats you right away.
Yeah, when you feel it, you're like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. So I tend to perceive that before I get the actual flavor, but I'm pretty sensitive to it. Some people are uber sensitive to it, and then other people, it takes a pretty high amount of
To
it
even
before
notice
they
it.
actually get it. Yeah. So you're not crazy on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just liked when you were describing it, like as you were building up to it, like eventually like the brewmaster came out because I was like, is she about to say we were drinking poison this whole time? She's like, it's got these very small, barely acceptable limits. I was like, oh crap, I drank so much of this.
We're dying.
Yeah.
Was I drinking cyanide or something? Like,
Yeah.
no.
Oh crap, it really was $12 a case. Oh no.
No, it's called diacetyl. So
And that's
yeah,
one of
you're
those things
not crazy.
I love that you know, it seems like, especially we said we're buddies with people in breweries in PA and a lot of beer, enthusiasts. And it's funny how much hatred you can get for loving beers like that. And I never understand. Number one, I'm like what you
cares?
like. Yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly right. There's a time and a place for every beer that is produced. Are some way better than others? Yes, absolutely. But the people that want to, and this is just a personal thing for me, I do not like the term beer snob. It's not something I would ever call myself. if somebody chooses to use that term for themselves, that's completely fine. Embrace it, whatever. It's just not something that I feel comfortable with because, like I said, I think that there's a time and a place for every beer in this world. Like, I can get down on some Jenny Cream, Lion's Head, and PBR, and like rock on, man.
Yeah.
And I can, in the same sitting, I can be drinking Cantillon and Toquin and Russian River and anything else that is top tier. So one of my favorite things to do is to show up to a bottle share where it's like all the whales, bro, and I show up with a case of Jenny Cream and people just look at me and I'm like, yep. And I tell you what, in an hour, you're going to be begging me for one of those Jenny Creams because your palate is going to be fatigued and you're going to be like, I just want a regular fucking beer right now. Yeah. So you're welcome.
I just want to enjoy what I'm drinking. Christ.
Yeah.
I'm sick of the homework.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of it too, is that sometimes, because my job is, I have to think about everything that I'm drinking, right? And even if I'm not drinking my own beer, a lot of times I'm drinking something that somebody has given me and they want my honest feedback on it. Or I'm doing, customer interaction, engagement, education, whatever it is. And so I'm speaking about it. So I'm thinking about it constantly. Yeah. Sometimes I just don't want to think about it anymore. I just want to drink something and be able to just fucking drink it. So, and I know what I'm going to get when I crack open a Jenny Cream. I know what I'm going to get when I crack open a PBR. Like, I don't have to think about it.
It's funny you said that because Jim and I both talked about the fatigue of, obviously you do it professionally. It's your levels above us. But when it comes to us drinking beers or playing video games, we unfortunately always have our analytical mind on. And that's one thing I wanted to ask you is, what was the last time you had a beer just for fun? Like, where you sat down, you were like, you know what, I'm not, but like, even if it was craft or whatever, like that you were just able to enjoy it and not like have that part of your brain.
Depends how many beers deep I am, probably. And also, there's, as much as I like trying new beers, I sometimes enjoy being able to have that beer again because I already know what to expect. So then I do get to actually just sit back and enjoy it and just drink it because I know that I'm going to enjoy it. So when was the last time I got to do that? I don't know. Probably a few days ago when I cracked open a beer that I'd already had before because I knew what to expect. So, but yeah, my mind does always go, and my palate is always going, oh, what is this? And I wonder what hops were in this, or so.
And before you know it, you look at your glass or can, you're like, it's done. Oh crap.
Yeah. And in some scenarios and situations, that's really fun because being able to geek out with somebody else or with a group of people over a beer is really fun. But when it starts to sort of preoccupy and you're not present in the moment, that's when I'm like, okay, Hannah, turn it off.
Yep. Yeah. That's a big problem, I think, with a lot of things these days is, you can tend to not be in the moment with it. And beer is one of those communal, it's a fun experience. But speaking of fun communal experiences, I was curious, when a beer's overhyped for you and you hear about it and everyone says, oh, you need to try it. Now, you've probably tried thousands of beers. Does it kind of like never meet your expectations? Like the easiest way I can describe it is Jim and I starting this page, we were very, very, very low on the understanding beer totem pole. But everyone, try 120 minute, get this, go into lines and wait for these releases. And these are going to be the best beers you ever have. And then we try it and it never, like, they were pretty damn good, but it was always like the hype was almost too real for some of them.
Yeah. Well, so how to best answer that? First of all, everybody's palate is different. So what you taste and what I taste are not necessarily going to be the same thing. what the people are tasting that have hyped this beer up may not be tasting the same thing that I'm tasting. One thing that I know that I have to keep in mind is I'm not the average beer consumer. And so some of these beers that are on the market, I'm not who they're trying to appeal to, right?
Yeah.
It would be really easy for me to hate on some of these really, really, really overly fruited beers, the milkshake IPAs, the beers that have unfermented fruit juice in it, the beers that people are putting cereal and Skittles and gummy bears and marshmallows and God only knows what else into it. Does part of me go, what? Yeah, some part of me does. But at the same time, part of brewing for me is being able to be creative and the innovation that goes along with it. I'm not going to stifle somebody's desire to be innovative. And again, I have to remember that what I want to drink is not necessarily what the average beer consumer wants to drink. I hope that by having some of those beers commercially available for people, that maybe that provides a gateway experience for people to break into craft beer. Maybe somebody that once was previously only a wine or mixed drink consumer taste something and they're like, wow, this is what beer can taste like. Okay. And little by little, they start exploring and trying new things. And, you know, we're able to grab a hold of some new consumers. I don't know. Where I draw the line, you will never find me making the conscious decision to put anything artificial into beer. That's not to say that if I were to work for somebody that insisted that I do that, I would do everything in my power to talk them out of it and tell them why I think that's a terrible idea. But I would still do it, I guess, because they're my boss.
Yeah.
But fortunately, I don't have to worry about that at Naked because
Nope.
they're on my side with that. So that's my hard line. So you will never find me putting Oreos or Skittles. I would put marshmallow because you can buy all natural marshmallow fluff. But anything that has artificial colors, flavors, or preservatives, you will not find me putting into beer.
So it's funny you talked about all those things because Jim's been teasing me about we need to try that beer called, what was it, Jim? The
Unicorn farts.
Unicorn. Yeah, the Fruity
From
Pebbles.
Dewclaw.
From Dewclaw. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's funny because I almost said while you're describing that, a lot of people, it feels like they're trying to do novelty beers, like you're saying. Like maybe they are just trying to attract the people. It's like, hey, we put bacon or oysters or whatever the case may be. And, you know, Jim and I, we've definitely been like, okay, well, it's some goofy flavor. Let's just try it. But the longevity of those beers never seems to last quite as long. And like you're saying, I don't know if it's a good thing or a detriment because it's kind of like, is it a stain on people who are doing it legit like you, who aren't using artificial flavors? But like you said, everyone's palate is completely different. So, you know.
Yeah. It's, you know, it's a tricky, that's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you bring up Dewclaw because I've actually done a collab with Dewclaw before.
Okay.
So, yeah. So I have no issues with Dewclaw. They're kind of an OG at this point. Like they've been in the industry for a long time. And they were super relevant for a long time. And then they became super not relevant. And they had to start doing things to become relevant again. And, you know,
they're here.
They're doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
They're doing it.
Hope you stick around.
They're doing it. And I'm not going to criticize them or hate on them for that. There are breweries that I think, I don't like to talk. I don't like to talk badly about breweries, but there are breweries that are going about this in a really wrong way. That are just they basically are just saying, "Fuck you, consumers. We don't care. You're gonna keep buying our shit, and jokes on you." That doesn't sit right with me. Um, there's a brewery in the Midwest somewhere that got called out earlier this year for producing beers that they had labeled at, like 9%, and turns out they're like 3 or 3.5%, because of the amount of fruit juice that they were putting in it, because they didn't understand how basic math worked. Those are the people that it makes it so much harder for the rest of us. And they're kind of dicks about it and are just kind of like, nah, whatever. You have a can explode, that's your fault. But is it? I don't think so. Like, that's not what I got into this industry for. But at the same time, I'm not going to stomp my feet and throw a temper tantrum and be a petulant little child, because there are enough people in this industry doing that, and I don't need to be one of them. I'm just here to brew good beer. I know that I can brew good beer, and keep pushing that out there. So
It is funny you say that because every once in a great while we'll see this story where it'll be like a brewer makes a mistake of like going into the forums on like Beer Advocate or something like that, taking it just a bit too personally and kind of like responding personally to like every single comment that's going on. And you're just watching. I'm sitting there and the end user going, "This is a glorious dumpster fire." Meanwhile, I'm sure the way it's from what it sounded like, all these brewers like you all talk to each other live. You like really know each other. It's for as big and wide out as it is, it's still kind of small and tight knit too. And you're all just like kind of looking at him like from the corner, just going, "Dude, shut the fuck up."
yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's a state. It's what sucks is, yeah. Unfortunately, as a brewer, you're going to get lumped in with if they have jackasses who do that, or if you have anyone who is priced like anyone that's kind of screwing over consumers. Unfortunately, that it sucks that generalizations will get made about that. But like you said, all you can do is keep making great beer. I don't think anyone's gonna have to worry about that coming from Naked Brewing or wherever you're brewing at the time. And yeah, we hear those stories, and those are the ones that always catch our eyes when brewers kind of lash out at their fans. And I can't imagine. I mean, you put so much time, sweat, heart into brewing your beer, and I'm sure if you go on Untapped, if you go on Beer Advocate, and you see someone who's probably very uneducated and they just picked up the beer and they're giving their opinion, it's probably, I'm sure it's frustrating as hell. And you get a very human moment where you say, you know what, fuck you. Like,
Yeah.
I can get that.
It can be really frustrating. One of the first lessons that I learned, even as a home brewer, I learned this, but definitely once I got myself into the industry, one of the very first lessons I learned was humility, and learning that not everything that you brew is going to be stellar. And it's learning how and when to cut your losses with that when that happens. And it's also learning your product, learning appropriate flavor profiles, and then being able to parlay that into customer education, which I think is a huge component. So Way to My Heart is a beer that, to look at it, you go, I'm not really sure about this. Like, this doesn't sound like something that I would necessarily want. But when you really think about it, or if I'm given the opportunity to speak about it to customers, or if one of our servers in the tap room has the opportunity to speak to a customer about it and kind of explains what to expect and the story behind it, that seems to go a pretty long way, and it opens people's minds a little bit more to trying it. Because, I mean, truth be told, if I were to see this beer sitting on the shelf and see it described as a cheesecake style sour ale with cherries and vanilla and milk sugar, I would go, nah, I'm good. I'll go with something else. But when you taste it, it's not as it's different. It's very different than what you would expect. And for me, that different is a good kind of different. And as much as I hate Untapped, because there are a lot of opinions and it's all subjective, I also religiously stalk Untapped because I have to. I need to know what the consumers are saying about the beers that we're producing. Because again, I'm not the average beer consumer. People that are checking beers in on Untapped and giving it ratings and hopefully giving it some sort of like actual written
Substance,
feedback.
yeah.
That's
Shit
the
sucks,
stuff
1 star.
yeah. Okay. Don't like sours.
You're like, then why'd
fuck
you
you
try
drinking?
it?
Okay. But you know, that's the kind of stuff that I want to see, and I want to understand that, and then I can use that as either, yes, we're going to brew this beer again. No, we're not going to brew this beer again. Or yes, we are, but I'm going to change it. Or, okay, we're going to brew this again, but maybe we need to think about how we're presenting it. And maybe that's something in the nomenclature. So how it's actually like the style of beer is written. Or it could be the description on the side. It could be our descriptions on beer menus. It could be our description on Untapped, any social media, stuff like that. So
Yeah, and I mean, as a head brewer, and looking when you said you religiously search Untapped, it's funny because I feel like any creator of anything, if your stuff is out there and you have some app that you can get your feedback,
some sort of metric to
yes,
measure it. Yeah.
It's a probably a blessing and a curse because on one hand, if it hits off and the algorithm hits and it starts recommending it to people or saying, "Hey, we notice you like sours, go try this one." So it's kind of that, but yeah, you probably scroll through like 500. Oh, this is awesome, and then you see that one or two. I don't like this, and that like yeah. You're like, you son of a bitch. Like, why? And and of course they never give you the feedback because that's the feedback, like you're saying, you probably look for. Because if somebody loves it, that's nice. But is there anything like you would change, you know?
Right. Like if somebody gives it 1.5 caps, you know, but there's no feedback on it, I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do with that? Like,
exactly.
okay.
You're like, thank you.
Like one of my favorites, and it actually pertains to Way to My Heart. One of my favorite recent Untapped reviews that I read was this guy said, what did he say? Something like, tastes nothing like cheesecake. And some sort of like acronym, you know, that the kids use after that. But it wasn't a kid. It's like this mid-50s guy, I think. Anyway,
Naturally.
and like two buddies commented underneath of it. One person said, yeah, it's beer. And another person said, it's cheesecake inspired. So I'm like, yeah, friends.
Yeah.
Like, you got my back.
Yep.
And then this guy checked in Covet and said, oh, thank God, this is so much better than the cheesecake one or something like that. And I'm thinking, okay. But like he still gave Way to My Heart, I think 3.5 caps. So I'm like, whatever, I'll still take it. That's okay. But I just thought it was really funny. And then, you know, like the comments underneath it, like, yeah, it's just cheesecake inspired. It's a beer. It's a beer, man.
What do you, yeah. That, like you said, it's funny when people see the labels, they're gonna be like, "What am I gonna be drinking? A cheesecake?" The education of people drinking the beers is important because I can tell you, and this is something I did want to get in with you, is that gap for everyone when you go from your Genesees, your Lion's Head, your PBRs, your Buds, whatever you start off with. Eventually, there's that like bridge beer, I call it. And then eventually you're like, okay, I'll dip my toe. Jim and I have said many times on this podcast, our like bridge beers were probably like somehow we jumped from all the regular, I'll call it regular beers, to a Golden Monkey. And it was a big jump. It was like, what the hell? Like, oh, beers can get you this drunk? Like, that's what we were looking for at that time in our life. I'm curious with you, what was like the craft beer or beer in general that made you go, holy shit, like this opened up my world and now I maybe want to start brewing it?
Yeah, so I was in college,
Of course,
and
21, right?
actually, so this story actually does. I was actually 21 in this story, but yeah. Oh yeah, I was totally 21 the first time I
Of
tried beer. I
of
wasn't.
course, yeah.
I wasn't. I wasn't a bad high school kid.
Of course not. You didn't go to
Um,
woods and go to parties and drink. No.
no, or ask my best friend's older sister to buy us beer and
Of course not.
green apple schnapps because that's what we liked. Ugh. Anyway,
That
Ooh,
I
or
know.
99 bananas.
Oh my God. Yeah. God.
that's a throw up you never forget the flavor of.
That and Aftershock. I might be
Oh,
dating myself right now because Aftershock is no longer produced, but
yep.
um, think Fireball, but worse.
Oh God.
Like, think Fireball. Actually, think like if Goldschlager and Rumpelmintz
Yes.
had a baby.
Oh no.
That's what Aftershock was. It was
It's
so it
awful.
had like crystals inside of it that were like this weird cinnamon mint. Oh my God. Whoa. Whoa. Oh my God. I just can't. I can't. Okay, we
Bad in your
can't talk
mouth,
about
bad in
it.
your
Can't even
nose the next
describe
day.
it.
We can't talk about it anymore. Anyway, so the it was so right after I turned 21, I was like one of the last of my friends that turned 21. This it had been like this super divey bar, and it I think got bought out, but it turned into this craft beer bar. And they did like these passport things. So you would like drink around the world and like drink beers from different countries and like they would stamp your passport.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool. That was something I had never
I like,
experienced
yeah.
before. I was doing an internship. This was my senior year. So I turned 21 like the week that I started my senior year of college. So I was doing an internship and it was actually a paid internship. So, I thought I was like rolling in fat stacks of dough here. So Fridays I would go to this bar and I would meet my friends for happy hour and we would, get out our passports and like be like little dorks. Um, and that was the first time that I really tried some beers that I mean, I had never even heard of. Some of them I couldn't even pronounce at the time. That was the first time that I had Monk's Flemish Red Ale.
Yeah.
I had Golden Rock, and but the beer that I really liked, and it's kind of funny to say now, but it was Appalachian's Water Gap Wheat because it's such like a easy drinking beer, right?
That's a
Um,
summer beer all the way. Yeah.
it is. But yeah, that was kind of the beer that I was like, okay, yeah, this is good. And then from there, I kind of just kept really trying different things. Sorry, I have hiccups.
No.
Um, so yeah, that was kind of the beer that really got me going. That and Guinness, and I actually have Guinness on tap at home. So that the love of Guinness hasn't
Oh, I
gone
love
away.
that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of all the macro beers, it's funny. Guinness is the only one that I think still doesn't get shit like of all the big beers. Like
Yeah.
and I know some people might still, but I still don't meet that many people that really hate on Guinness that much.
No, well, and because Guinness is still so it's owned by Diageo. Um, and like, yeah, they're big, but they're not AB InBev, like
Yeah.
they're not Heineken. And they still, I mean, the fact that they have a US brewery again is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And the head brewer for the US brewery, fun fact, is a woman, and her name is Holly, and she's a dear friend of mine, and she is fucking kick-ass. I love
Is there gonna
Holly.
Are you telling us there's gonna be a Naked Guinness collab?
Oh, God, I wish. I wish.
A cheesesteak or a cheesecake Guinness stout.
Yeah. I wish, man. I would love to brew with Guinness, but I mean, I've been down there a number of times, and yeah, I mean,
Where-
I'm sure that I could go brew with them and they could come brew with me, but we would never get it as a collab.
Yeah.
That's too many different levels of things. I'd rather just hang out with my friends.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I like when you tried that wheat beer and you said like did that start you going, okay, I clearly wheat beers are a thing I like. Did you keep going down wheat beer or then did you start trying everything?
I just really tried anything and everything. And yeah, I mean, yeah, it was really pretty much I would try anything that I had the chance to try. I should actually probably back that story up. When I was not 21, I remember getting a mixed variety case from Yingling, and their black and tan was in there, and their porter. And I loved both of those beers. I still like both of those beers. I still like Lord Chesterfield too. So those were also sort of a departure from, like lager or PBR or, Miller Lite or whatever. So yeah, technically Yingling is still craft beer. I'm not sure that I would put it on the same level as like Appellation, which was really sort of a craft beer that, really got me. So, and then from there it was, in terms of like local, trogs. I grew up in Harrisburg and then I lived in Hershey. And I actually lived in Hershey when they moved to Hershey and would sit in their tasting room and work on my master's thesis. So
that's awesome.
Tough life.
Because it was, I needed to get out of my house because there's so many distractions there. So I would go and sit during the day when there was nobody there. This was in 2000, again, I'm going to be dating myself, but this was in 2011. Nice. 2011. So, they weren't nearly as big and popular as they are now.
So you said you're in college, you're working on your master's thesis, but had you tried your hand or even given a thought to let me start brewing some?
Yeah. So I had homebrewed during undergrad a few times. I homebrewed one time with Kevin Walter, who owns Love City.
Okay.
Yeah, so he and I have known each other since sophomore year of college. So yeah, I had homebrewed a few times in college. As is with anything in college, like your attention span is very short. It's kind of like tell me where the next party is, and
yep.
Yeah. So yeah, it wasn't really until after I had graduated. My brother and I had homebrewed together a few times, and then some time had passed. And I ended up moving out here to Bucks County in 2012, towards the end of 2012, and moved in with my now husband, but we were roommates at the time. So both of us had homebrewed with friends individually, and we were like, yeah, let's do this. Like, let's try homebrewing again. Like, and let's do this together. So we went to Keystone Homebrew Supply, which is actually really close to where we live, and bought a whole bunch of stuff, started homebrewing. Fast forward a few months, and I started working there. And yeah.
and that was just off to the races.
Then it was just kind of off to the races. John Stemler, who is one of the co-founders of Free Will, had previously worked at Keystone as well. And so I got to know John, and he offered me a job bartending one day a week. And this was back in the basement days of Free Will. This is also pre-law change. So this was when you could not buy beers for consumption to drink on premise. Breweries with the licensing that Naked has, Free Will has, just about every other brewery that is not also a brew pub. That licensing, you were only allowed to either give away samples or sell people beer to go. So that was growlers, This is before crowlers were a thing, and bottles, kegs, stuff like that. So bartending back then was way different. That law changed the end of 2014, going into 2015. So it's actually not that long ago. But people tend to not remember that, I think.
And it's such a nice change.
Yeah. So I was working at Keystone and at Free Will. I did that for 18 months. I was one place or the other pretty much every single day. I had one day off like every other week. And hustle hard. And I bugged the shit out of them for 18 months to hire me full time, and then eventually they did. So so that's sort of how I got into the beer world. The short answer is right place, right time, and the long answer is persistence. And passion.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, who knows, had you not gone to that dive bar and done the tour around the world, like you said, like, would you have ever really gone down, like appreciating or liking beer? Who knows?
Who knows? I mean, I think I probably would have, because, I didn't turn up my nose at, shitty beer in college. I didn't really ever, I don't know. Well, I don't know if I can actually say that. I was still the person that would drink beer even if cocktails were an option. I don't know. I just...
You weren't saying, hey, I can't drink that because that's bullshit. Yeah, you were just, if it's there, you're like, yeah, I'll drink it. And you had appreciation for it all.
Yeah, and I was probably challenging you to a game of beer pong or flip cup. So
exactly.
And dominating you.
But like, that's one of those things. So, you fast forward, you're a head brewer now, and
it's fucking trippy.
I love those stories though, of something that was call it a minor hobby in college, like you said, because who has time to pay attention to anything? But now that you've been doing it, and you're doing it at a time where the world is going through an interesting time, and being a head brewer during COVID, like, I'm sure that's not stressful at all.
No, not at all. I think the only thing in this industry that is more stressful than being a head brewer is being an owner. Because that is a whole other level of responsibility that I'm thankful to not have. However, working for Naked, I mean, it's ownership, Sean, Jim, and then me. Like, so it's pretty much the three of us, and that's it. And Jim has a full-time job. He is the original founder and owner of Naked, and then Sean came on board a couple years later. Oh, my cat decided she wants to join us. Okay. Hi. Hi, kitty. Hi, kitty.
Mom.
Yeah. Well, this is her area up here. Her food bowl's over there. So
she's like, get out of here.
She's like, what are you doing up here, woman?
So she kills the whiskey when you're not around.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. You can eat. I'll stop. All right. I don't even know what I was saying. Sorry.
No. So with the three of you, kind of you're
yes.
They're the owners. You're the head brewer. But
yes. So it's a very the three of us have a really great relationship. There's a lot of trust between the three of us. There's a lot of value that we all provide, but we all also see the value that others provide, and it's a really supportive environment. Super supportive.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I don't ever feel like, oh, you're just the head brewer, like, do as we say. If there's something that I don't feel comfortable with or something that I have a strong opinion on, I feel very comfortable approaching both of them with it, which, especially in the time of COVID, I think is hugely important. The three of us are on a text chain that, is just constantly going.
Yeah, I'm sure.
About things that are important, but it's constantly going with different different things because we're not always in the same place. Like I said, Jim has a full-time job. Sean is there with me most days, but she also has a family at home and 3 kids that are trying to do school virtually. So she's got her hands full, plus, running a business and running front of house stuff. So it's super challenging. One of the biggest things when I came on board, so I came on board July 1st. So, the world had already sort of been in this COVID realm for a few months by the time I came on board.
Yeah.
They had actually shut down for a little bit at the beginning of quarantine, just because nobody knew what was going on. There's too many uncertainties, and they were trying to do the right thing for the community and society in general, and then open back up slowly to just doing curbside. Even when we went to a green phase and we're allowed to have people to some capacity, it was still very much focused on doing curbside. One of the things that when I came on board, I had sort of planned to steer the ship in the direction of going was canning, but that's not a small endeavor.
And can I just say thank you so much for doing that?
Yeah.
As a consumer, I can tell you right now, one of the go-to things of buying beers, and you're explaining it, but I'm sure it's not easy. But oh my God, the amount I just want to always buy the cans because I do have growlers or six, I have the little kegerators, but it's sometimes there's just a nice, I can have the cans, them here. And
absolutely.
It just makes it so much,
Absolutely. And that package volume of, either 12 or 16 ounces, which, we do everything in 16 ounce, but that's the perfect size for somebody to drink by themselves, but you could also split it with somebody. Whereas when you get a 64 ounce growler or even a 32 ounce growler, that's a lot of beer and that's a commitment, So having 16 ounces at your disposal is definitely nice. But that was definitely something that I felt was really important, especially moving forward. Our tap room is so small and we don't have the ability to do outside service anymore. That's a whole other story. I'm not even going to get into it, but so how do you get your beer into people's hands? And, the easiest way to do that is to make it easy for them. Be able to have prepackaged product, things that are visually and aesthetically pleasing for people to look at, things that are easy for them to then split with a friend and say, you know what, I'm going to go buy a 4-pack from here, you go buy a 4-pack from there, and we'll split it. That's easy to do, and it takes the guesswork out of it for people. And it's things that by having an online sales platform also removes a barrier. It's trying to remove as many barriers as you can, and reasons for people to say no and not buy your product is obviously that's a whole sales thing, which is not necessarily my forte, although I'm not terrible at it. So,
well, like I said, I've told you off air, but I do want to commend you between the beer itself, the packaging, the online, because when COVID hit, that was one of the things is we live in the area, and Naked was one of the breweries we were always checking, once breweries started to make beer available. And, once you came on, honestly, within the past month, we noticed, hey, it's readily available. The site's there, and everything you're pointing out is exactly, I'm like, oh, yeah, they have it all there. I'll just go buy one of everything because it's now easily accessible. Mm-hmm. And it made a huge difference in me going there and wanting to get all that. So I noticed a big difference once you came on board. And like I said, and that's no knock on anyone previously, but between the beer and everything, it's just, that's the direction where I feel like you almost have to go, especially because who knows what 6 months down the line is going to look like.
Exactly. And that was part of it too, was when I came on board, it was me sort of thinking and talking with ownership, and saying, we don't know where we're going to be.
Yeah.
We don't know what's going to happen with this. And I think we need to prepare ourselves for 100% complete shutdown, going back to where we were in March. And if that happens, we need to be positioned so that we can still get our beer into people's hands, and not have to be in a forced 100% shutdown and then be sitting on all this product. So how do we do that? Well, that's cans. So we need to make sure that what we're brewing, we have plans to package. We still have done some things that are draft only. So like the cream ale is one of them. We've done a West Coast IPA. I've done a Hefeweizen, a fresh hopped blonde ale, a black currant wheat, that are all draft options only. But the majority of what I've been brewing, since I came on board, is all sort of stuff that we can.
You've been, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is one of the things, like I said, we love. And it kind of brings me to one thing Jim and I have talked about many times with brewers. And I'm very curious, as you said, you and the owners, you're like a trifecta of working together. We're noticing anymore, and I'm comparing beer can art, if you will, almost to like the days, and I'm dating myself. You go back, you go to a store to rent a VHS tape, and you're seeing the display, and you're almost seeing like what catches your eye.
Absolutely.
And like what kind of, who drives the input as far as, okay, I want the can art to look like this, Is it you drive it? Okay.
Yes, Sean and I both. So I'm gonna say this without, or hopefully say this without coming off as sounding pretentious or conceited. First of all, Sean and Jim hired me for a lot of different reasons, but they hired me for the biggest reason, and that's because I came with experience. And I came with knowledge and a brewing pedigree, if you will, that could do nothing but help them and help take them to the next level. And so when we first started talking about doing canning, I was very vocal about things that I had learned by, coming from a larger production-based brewery. And absolutely no criticism to Sean and Jim whatsoever, because they had not had that kind of experience. And had I not worked for Free Will and had that experience, I wouldn't have been able to provide any of this insight either. But luckily, I did come with some of that experience. So there were a lot of things that I was very instrumental in implementing, and things that I was sort of like, this is a non-negotiating factor. Like, this has to be part of our plan when we do this. And then some other things I was just kind of like, whatever. But one of the things that I think is super duper important, I'm going to just use this can as reference, which I hand applied this label today because I snagged a little fill can because we're pretty much out of this beer. So excuse the label. But one of the things is the template that you'll see. And if you have another one of our cans sitting there.
Two of them right here.
Yeah. So along the top, Naked Brewing, bottom, there's the band, right? So that's sort of the template that appears on every can. So that was something that I thought was hugely important. Have those two things. Have your branding be there, and it's prominent, and it's right on the front, because my mind goes to, okay, people are going to be buying these cans. Hopefully, people are also taking photos of these cans and posting it to their social media. I want to make sure that our name is front and center right there. So there is no question when somebody looks at that, who does that beer? Oh, that's really cool label art. Okay, well, how many pictures have you seen, since we were talking about breweries in PA, in the beer group, where somebody just posts a picture of a can, and you have no fucking clue
Yep.
who's made that beer.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
we've had a lot of times where we'll try. Like my wife was getting me these the craft beer like boxes that you could get like mail
Like
order, and they'll send you
Tabor.
like a
Yeah.
craft beer kings stuff like that.
Yeah.
And like we'll be every time we do the podcast, I would whip out another one, and we always introduce them. And there's been episodes where I'm looking at it for like 5 minutes, going, "Where's the fucking name?" Like,
Yeah.
Who did it? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but that's something that I don't want that to be a question. I want somebody to be able to post a picture of our can, and it's exactly who did it. Um, in addition to brewing and other things that I did at Free Will, I also did social media for a long time. So, so these are things that I think about.
Yeah.
So that was one thing. Having label art that is eye-catching is sometimes it's colors, sometimes it's a pattern, but I wanted it to be unique. So our artist actually is her name's Gabby. She's young. She is a freshman in college, actually. So she's going to Moore College of Art and Design in Philly. But she's a super talented artist, and she hand draws all the labels. It's,
Nice.
nothing is just like clip art or,
Yeah.
images that she distorts and like puts filters to or anything like that. And again, if that's what somebody is doing for their label art, that's fine, whatever. I think that there's some value to having, some really cool hand-drawn art. You also don't have to worry about IP theft.
Exactly.
So,
Well, here's one of the things, and if you feel like it's stepping on toes, stop me.
yeah, it's okay.
We've also talked about like it is one of those things. If I've never because like I've had stuff from Naked or other breweries that I know, yes, I'm always going to be returning company. But if I'm trying something new, yes, the label art is one of the biggest things. If I'm in a bottle shop, if I'm somewhere and I just see whatever catches my eye is what I'm going to 1st. It seemed like the past year and a half, there's been this movement to minimalism and just very simple text. And even some of our favorites like Trogs,
I'm about
who
to say,
I still have some of the original Mad Elf bottles. I have all those.
Look
And
at my beer sign.
yeah,
ah,
exactly.
yes,
Yeah.
yep,
And
I don't know if you can see it or
the
not.
good old perennial
yeah,
or
but it's
perpetual. I mean,
Perpetual.
perpetual. But it's one of those.
I can
We
read.
loved all of Trogs label art, and they've switched to what they've switched to. And I'm not trying to
See,
judge
I
them.
love their label art. I love
The new one?
I love their new label art.
I mean, to me though, but that reads as like the other ones. I almost read like the perpetual, like how you just had Dreamweaver, Troganator, Mad Elf. They came off as fun, something what like. If you don't know Trogs and you look at their new ones, to me, they just read as just very meh. Like they're muted compared to what they were, and it's tough because obviously it's the head brewer or whoever makes that decision, and it's a direction they want it to go. But we're noticing like a lot of breweries, and I'm just using Trogs because that's the local example. But some of them will literally just have just writing. It'll be like our IPA or whatever. That's fine, and yes, quality should stand above label art. But at some point, like as a head brewer, do you see that and sometimes think like, put a little effort into some of those more muted?
Yes and no, because I'm a very creative, artistic person, but I actually find that some of those more simplistic labels are very eye-catching. They're very pleasing. They're very soothing. And believe it or not, it's actually really hard to pull off a simple label like that. From a design perspective, that because so if you have all of these different things going into it, all these different colors and patterns or whatever, like, okay, you can make it all work. But when you literally have two colors and maybe just words, it suddenly becomes so important where your placement is, your font size, what font you use, what two colors do you use. So there's a whole science that goes into that. There's a whole human behavioral, um, and psychological study that goes into those decisions. So I don't actually think that it is as simple as people realize. And also, for some people, so you said that you guys are mechanical engineers. Okay,
Yeah.
so knowing that and hearing your statement just now is very confusing to me, and I'll tell you why. Because in general, I feel like engineers are the type that they want the straight, they want the right angles, they want the black and white. They don't want any of that frilly shit. That is confusing and chaotic to them. My husband is an engineer, so he's black and white, right angles, OCD, everything has a place. Like, I mean, you see my whiskey shelf behind me, like it is super well organized. Um,
Yeah.
Everything has a place, but what is super interesting is that all three of you guys don't like the new Trogs branding, and I personally love it.
Yes. You
So
know what? I have a
I think
theory.
that's funny.
I have a theory.
Okay, tell me your
Here's the
theory,
thing.
because I really, it puzzles me that he doesn't like the new branding either.
So, because like you said, with being the engineer things, and I'm sure your husband and Brian are much better engineers than me, but it's still like you said, the analytical sense and looking too much into it. Beer still part for us is our escapism too. So if we want our escapism, I
Okay.
think we're gonna try and go full bore into it. So we want wild and crazy shit, just like the complete opposite of like our everyday lives, and like
Okay.
the straight and narrow, and
Okay.
like, oh, two colors, yeah, it gets to the point, it's pretty good. Like, no, like I want that elf like laughing at you for being drunk. I want that giant Satan for the Troganator, that kind of deal. So when all the new labels came out, I was like, I mean, they're fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
I still drink the shit out of it, but I don't know. It just took some of the pizzazz away, I think.
Okay.
and to what Jim said is actually very true, because of our group of friends, everyone is kind of how you describe. They're more, I don't know if square is the right word, but they're very like plain Jane when it comes to like, yes, everything needs to be format, whatever. Jim and I, we're more the creative of our group. On the side, we were always,
Okay.
I was always doing video editing. I was always drawing. Jim, he's a drummer. We
Okay.
both love video games, so we appreciate like, and we dive into them not just for the escapism, but also we appreciate the art in them.
Okay.
So we are always looking at that, and I think the two of us both are way more creative in the sense of we appreciate graphic design in that, and especially spending the amount of time I have on those things. I everything you said, when you make it something simple, my God, like the labeling becomes so important for font and everything. It is kind of just a downer. It's like, man, we love those Trog labels so much.
Yeah.
And then to see them go to that, it was almost just like, it just seemed like they were riding a wave of other breweries we saw doing that too. And I was like, is that the new thing people are going to do?
So I think yes and no. And it's funny again that you guys are bringing Trogs up, because I use them as an example of a brewery that kind of helped pave the way for a lot of other small breweries. They've been around since the 90s, and they were in that first craft beer wave. It was like them, Yards, Victory, Weyerbacher, Lancaster, Appalachian, at least in our, kind of home region. But, all of those breweries that sort of started in the same time frame. Trogs for me is the epitome, prime example of a brewery that has continued to reinvent themselves and stay relevant and stay current and still be able to draw in the people that are chasing these hype beers, the people that want the beers that they have to go stand in line for, the beers that are so hard and they're so exclusive, and they only made 30 cases of this beer. Trogs is still able to get those same people
Yeah.
But some of those other breweries that I just mentioned are not able to do that. And one of those breweries in particular that I just mentioned is hurting very, very, very badly and filed bankruptcy. And they have been refinanced, but you know, Trogs is not in that boat. They are continuing to expand. They're expanding their distribution footprint. They're expanding their facility. They're expanding their offerings, but they are still just as relevant today as they were in 1997. So that to me is like, that's some fucking magical stuff going
Placed,
on.
yeah.
So, and I think part of that was realizing that their branding was a little antiquated, and they needed to update that a little bit and bring it into a little bit more of a modern time to appeal to some of these newer craft beer consumers that wanted things that were in that more artistic but not kitschy
Yep.
realm.
Yeah, like basically they almost evolved, like they grew up in a way.
They did, and they've
Yeah.
evolved really well. And like I said, I think for me, Trogs is a really prime example of a brewery that has done it right and continues to do it right,
Yeah.
with very few missteps, and continues to appeal to those people that are going to go stand in the lines at Equilibrium and Hudson Valley, but are also going to drive to Trogs.
Yeah.
It's almost like they're being ahead of the game too, because like when we're trying all these different beers, you see a wall of outlandish looking, label designs and art and shit like that, and then you see simple little, oh, Dreamweaver, this looks good. So in a way, it almost stands out by being that simplistic now too.
They're going out of their way to make sure their bottles stand out. That's definitely true. I definitely did not think of it in those terms. It makes sense, like I said. Of course, the nostalgia of I don't know, everyone we knew and grew up with, like Mad Elf was that craft beer, especially around December.
That's a
that,
gateway
like,
drug.
Yeah.
Mad Elf is a
Like,
gateway drug.
Yeah.
and that's one of those beers where I love Trogs actually came out and like you're not supposed to age those bottles yet. Everyone we knew aged those bottles, and they're like, some people would have them for like 6 years. They're like, they're not meant to be aged like that. Don't do that,
Yeah.
because they're like, oh, it tastes more like cherry and honey now. But everyone we knew did have them. They would mark them up, say this is from 2010 or whatever it was. And it's still one of those, that's one of those beers, though. It's funny when you talked about people's palates changing or just anything. Like, I swear from year to year, and as a head brewer, I'm sure you can appreciate it. Everyone's like, oh my God, the batch from 2013 was so much better than the batch right now. It's so funny, though. People treat it like they got a whole wall of it, like wines. Like, oh, this is the good year of the Mad
There's
Elf.
so many different things that play into that. And I'm not discounting that. Yes, there are differences from year to year, but when people are so steadfast in their opinions on that, I sometimes I just take it with a grain of salt. I think it really depends on who's saying it. If it's somebody that is just kind of like puffing their chest up and going, "Oh, look at me! I have a 8-year vertical of this, and 2011 was the best year and it just hasn't been as great since then," I go, okay. But if it's somebody that's going, I really appreciated 2011 because blah, 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 blah. Like, there's so many different factors. They use cherries in it. Cherries are a fruit product that is very dependent on the growing season. So no two growing seasons are going to taste the same. So your cherries aren't going to taste the same. Same with the honey. Honey is going to vary from year to year too.
Oh, yeah.
And not so much with Mad Elf, but with other beers, your hop crop is going to be different from year to year. So there is something to be said about that, but I also kind of roll my eyes sometimes at when people say that. Yeah, it's like, okay, man, your palate is so influenced by time of day, what you've had to eat that day, what you've had to drink that day. For women especially, it's hormone related as well. There's just so many different factors that go into how you perceive flavor profiles.
Oh, it's funny. Earlier you mentioned Untapped is something that can be frustrating for you, but for me, as someone, and you've tried 10 times more beer than me, I'm sure, but like I'm in the 1,000 range now, and it's like I'll go back and retry a beer that I had previously logged, and I'll be like, I taste something different. Like I have a different opinion now.
Absolutely.
I don't trust my own memory. Shit, I don't even trust my own previous write ups of that time. Because, like you're saying, I don't know what state of mind I was in when I logged it. So, anyone that, like, claims in 2020 that their 2011 memory is so spot on for exactly how meta, I never take that. I never take that seriously.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Hard
you had
eye
a beer.
roll.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, Hannah, here's a question for you.
Yeah.
Speaking with like evolving taste and all that, what's a beer that you had that like when you first either were started getting into craft or as you're going through it all, like you drank it and you're like, this is undrinkable. I don't know how people do this. But then you go back years later, maybe after being in the business for so long, you're like, oh, this is completely tame compared to what I've had since. Like for me, like early in my craft days, like I got a case of Smutty Nose, and to me that was like the most like hop laden ridiculous IPA I ever had, and it took me like 4 months to get through a case of it. Where I can go to it now and I'm like, it's an IPA. So, what was
Yeah.
like the one that stands out for you like that?
Well, so I don't know. I don't know if I can actually give you, like, just off the top of my head without really thinking about it. I don't know if I could give you a very specific beer example, but I can give you a hop example. And this
Alright.
is like super pertinent to like physically, like right now, today. So, Simcoe hops. I feel like when I first started drinking craft beers, especially IPAs, Simcoe was in everything.
Everything.
It was like, it was the hop. I mean, Weyerbacher had their like Simcoe, I forget what it was called, but like the Simcoe was used, I feel like, in everything. And I
Everywhere.
just feel like I got really burned out on it. It was oftentimes I feel like the profiles that I was getting out of it were super dank, which I'm down with dank, but like super dank, and it just had this lingering bitterness that wasn't it just wasn't my jam. And for a long time I kind of wrote off Simcoe. I never designed a single recipe using Simcoe. um, I mean, when I was at Free Will, Craggle is the number one beer that they brew, number one seller, and that's Simcoe and Citra. I liked Craggle, but I would order it maybe once every 3 months. But that was a rare occasion. I don't know, Simcoe was just not my thing. So then we have this unofficial cat series of beers. And the second one in the series is being released this week, and it's called Krampus Cat. And I was thinking about, well, what do I want to design this beer as? So it's a hazy IPA, 2 hops. I'm like, I feel like Simcoe. Like, I really just feel like I should give Simcoe a try again. So Simcoe tends to pull out a lot of pine. And like resinous pine sap profile. Some people describe it as one of the cat piss hops. Um, I know you laugh, but that's like actually a thing. So like Simcoe, Chinook, Columbus, sometimes Nugget. Um, those are all sort of in that cat piss thing. I
These
know
all
it
sound like
sounds.
weed names.
No. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hops and cannabis are in the same family. So, yeah, it makes total sense. Um,
That's true.
so I was like, okay, I guess I'll give Simcoe a try again. So I ordered some and mind blown. Like this lot of Simcoe that I got it is so fresh cut pine and citrus, but it reminds me, so there's a pine tree called concolor fir, and like if you break the needles, it's a common Christmas tree, but if you break the needles, it smells like pithy orange, but like also super juicy orange, like a clementine. That's what this Simcoe smelled like. So when I first opened this bag to use it in the brew, I mean, I was like, holy shit. This is not Simcoe that I remember. Like, this is amazing. And it smelled like peach rings. It smelled so fucking good. So today we announced the release of Krampus Cap. And I had like re-shared it on my social media. And I was getting text messages and Instagram and Facebook messages galore, like nonstop for like 3 hours today from people saying, oh my gosh, I need this beer. Oh my gosh, this sounds so good. And so I was like, you know what? Yeah, it was really good when I had it the other day when I transferred it into the bright tank. But like now that it's canned, I should probably taste it like in its final packaging format. So I found a low fill can and cracked it open. And I'm not even kidding you guys. I sent a text message to Sean and Jim and I go, guys, dude, this shit is so fucking good.
You got a hit.
So I even said, I was like, this has sort of restored my faith in Simcoe. Like I think I kind of want to use Simcoe some more. So that was a very long story to tell you about Simcoe, but
No, but
yeah.
I love that. And before I follow up with that, if you could just put 2 cans on the side for us to buy off you,
Yeah.
so we definitely can get it. I would love that.
Now, did you have any friends from back in the day who, when you were bashing Simcoe, were like, "Ah, look who came crawling back"?
No, not so much in like let me rub it in your face kind of way, but I actually had this conversation a couple times since this beer has been in the tank. Since I opened that bag of Simcoe, like I was telling a couple people, like you know, and we all sort of had the same, like, kind of just got burned out on Simcoe, you know, like 10 years ago. It seemed like everything had Simcoe in it. And all these new hops came out, and those were way more fun than Simcoe, and there's something new. And so we all sort of were just like, yeah, you know, like, yeah, we use Simcoe, but it's not what I would typically put into a hazy. But yeah. So I'm actually really stoked to share this beer with some of those people that I've had this conversation with, because we were all sort of on the same page about it.
You also have nicer friends. Our friends would definitely rub our face in any mistake we made like that, or if we went back on it.
Hey, what happened to that opinion, Dick?
Yeah, yeah, you're not allowed to change opinions with our group. But it's funny you mentioned the hazy, because as a very general thing in craft beer in general, like I feel like the dominant style for, I don't know, 8 years, 9 years more, were always just IPAs.
Mm-hmm.
And the latest, you touched on it earlier, there's some PA breweries that in our opinion, made the whole milkshake IPA a thing. Mm-hmm. And now it's like in the past 3 years, people who are even vaguely into craft beer are all of a sudden like hazies are the way to go. Mm-hmm. Is that something like, have you noticed it on your end? Like, or is that just us maybe overlooking? Because it seems like every brewery, like, you know, my favorite beer style is probably a Russian Imperial Stout or some kind of stronger stout. Not necessarily bourbon barrel aged, but just like, you know, a really good stout. Jim loves his sours, but it seems like every brewery, no matter what, are going to have 2 to 3 different IPAs on tap. And it's because they're catering to, I think that's the most popular style. Like, what do you think has been the attributing factor to that, and then leading into the hazies?
I think a lot of it goes back to the innovation factor, right? So, there's so many different ways to answer this question. So,
and I know I just threw a lot at you.
Well, no. So I was gonna say, hops are constantly being invented. Like, that's not even the right word, but cultivated. New hop profiles, genotypes. I don't whatever the word
Yeah.
is.
Well, they're cross pollinating each
Yeah,
other with the
so
two.
they're
Yeah.
constantly coming out with new things, and the a great way to showcase a lot of those is obviously in IPAs. So one of the characteristics of a New England style IPA or a hazy IPA. So to me, a milkshake IPA is going to have lactose in it. A hazy IPA is going to be sort of same realm, just sans lactose. And a New England
Sure.
IPA can have lactose or not have lactose. That's the way that I view it. I don't know if, I mean, I could probably look up some more definitions of that, but um, hazy IPAs and milkshake IPAs. Hi, Kat. She's back.
It's all right. My dogs are over there are making their noise. So.
Um, so one of the characteristics of a hazy IPA is that it is going to have some bitterness, but it's going to have much more aroma and flavor versus that
Yes.
deep bitterness, right? So a lot of these
Yeah.
new hops that are emerging are best utilized as late addition hops, which are going to give you that flavor and that aroma. Um, so I think it's and which drives which, I don't know. Is it the hop
Yeah.
market is driving the hazy train, or is it the hazy train is driving the hop
The
market?
hops.
I don't know. Um, I think it's probably a little bit of both. And I think it's, again, people trying to be innovative and coming up with ways to utilize these new hop profiles that are coming about. But there's also so much more research that's being done on how to best utilize hops and when you add it and how the pH of your beer can affect that and the time in which your beer is in contact with the hops and there's just so many different factors and so much more research that's being done on it that small little tweaks here or there can completely change the flavor profile
Yeah.
of what you thought this hop could produce and now you're utilizing it in a different way and you're getting a completely different profile. So yeah, I don't know if I really answered your question or if
No, you
I.
did. I mean, the problem is, like I said, it's tough because, like you're saying, it's a matter of which is driving which with the evolution of the hops, and I think there's also something to be said. And correct me if I'm wrong, but there is a in doing research for some of the projects I have for our site, looking into different beer types, and I know the definitions and categorizations of all the different styles. I think I found over 186 different styles of beer
Mm-hmm.
if you keep breaking them down.
Mm-hmm.
Not suggesting IPAs are the easier, but it seems like there are certain brews that, if you have the hops, that can really drive all the different variations. And right now, the market for consumers seems to be that IPAs, whether it be hazy, milkshake, or any type, double, whatever, like they're IPA crazed. And I was kind of curious, like you said earlier, Simcoe were a thing, and Jim and I, when we first started the site, so many people, like, God forbid if it didn't taste like pure pine cone or just pine trees, everyone was like, oh, that's not a real craft beer. And it was usually with those Simcoes, like you were saying. And Jim and I never understood. We're like, yeah, but it's like really bitter. Like, we don't get it. And we like it now, but at the same time, it is an acquired taste, but it's almost like a badge of honor that, like, if you can take the most bitter IPA, you were a real beer drinker.
Right.
And unfortunately, we had a lot of people around us that had that mentality. So, as we've grown up, it seems like more and more, like I said, IPA is going nowhere. It's just now variations, whether you go that milkshake camp, whether you go the hazy or double, whatever you do, that seems to be the way that the market keeps going. And when you see that, does that influence you as a head brewer to say, well, I better make sure I have like one or two IPAs on tap no matter what?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you kind of summarized why hazies are so popular and the fact that They are a little bit less of that super abrasive bitterness, which makes it more approachable for people. And so again, it sometimes can provide that sort of gateway. When one of my favorite things is when people say to me, well, I don't like hoppy beers or I don't like IPAs. And I always come back and say, well, you just haven't found the right one yet. So there are so many different possibilities of flavor profiles, and just keep trying. You never know when you're going to find one that you really like. And play with different hop combinations is super cool. I really enjoy that side of things. So Krampus Cat is Simcoe and Mosaic. It's a really cool flavor profile. The last beer in the Cat series that I did was Sabro and Citra. The next hazy that I'm brewing will be Galaxy, Comet, and Southern Cross. So experimenting with these different combinations is, I mean, you have the world at your fingertips of this.
Yeah.
And that's really cool. So yeah, I don't know. It is, I think that it allows for a lot of creativity for people. And hops are a really easy thing to change. You can, so I'll give away some of my trade secrets here.
Get the notepad, Jim.
There's
Go on.
in my opinion, and this is a common saying that I will use, is there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. If you find a recipe that works really well, that you can produce, go with it. For my hazy IPAs, whether it's one of the Cat series, the unofficial Cat series, or it's one of the hazy double IPAs, trade secret, it's the exact same fucking recipe. And for a lot of breweries, it's the exact same fucking recipe. The difference between my regular and double IPA recipe is just more malt or less malt, and the amount of hops, is set ratio within that. But just change your hops. There's no need to change the entire beer, and so I think that gives people a little bit of predictability from a production standpoint, but
Sure.
Something new. And that actually takes me to another point, which is today's craft beer consumers want something new all the time. They don't want to go into their brewery and their favorite brewery and see the same things on tap. They want to see maybe one or two of the same things, because they'll also complain that, like, well, why don't you still have this? But they want the new stuff constantly. And so when every week, because this is where we are right now in this market, is breweries that are expected to do weekly can releases. We can't keep up with that personally. We try, but people expect weekly can releases. And sometimes these breweries are putting out 2 or 3 new beers per week. Do you know how exhausting that is, to write that many recipes, source that many different ingredients, keep track of everything, design all of these labels? Now, granted, the breweries that are doing this have a much bigger staff than just one to do all those things. But, even doing weekly releases, like, I've gotten into a flow and a pattern, and I kind of have things in sort of, I don't want to say plug and play, but like I've developed some mechanisms on my end that help me to manage that. But that's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to do that. So having to write a new recipe for all of these beers becomes really exhausting. So that's why you see breweries doing beers is sort of a series, right? So it's the same
Yep.
basic concept. It might be the same base recipe, but you're changing the fruit or you're changing the hops. Maybe you're changing one malt. Instead of using pale malt, you're using Pilsner malt. But
Yeah, the market, well, I don't want to use the term unfortunately, but the market definitely has, I think, pushed that onto a lot of breweries. And, a perfect example, and once again, if you know anyone from there, don't step on toes, but I know someone personally who was affected or dealt with like tired hands. They're a perfect example of a can release all the time, and they have some of their mainstays, but there's almost a collector mentality in us being in the video games we talk about all the time. It's like, I want to be the guy that's tried every can, and I want to be in line, and I want to be able to say I tried all this shit. But it's like, to a regular consumer, and even Jim and I, we're more than just regular consumers. I don't want to have to commit 3-4 hours to go down, stand in line, maybe get a beer that's not going to be available again. Because if I love it, what's the like? I don't want to just love it for that minute. Like, so there's something
right.
to what you said. Trogs went from the labels they did to more minimalist, and I feel like right now that idea of the can release is that crazy label. And eventually, like, I want to maybe be able to come back to Naked and say, I want another Way to My Heart. Oh, it was only available for that one day? Well, that sucks because I really enjoyed it. Like, there's something nice about consistency and stability. And who knows, with COVID and everything, maybe that shit will calm down. But for us, that never appealed to us. Like, I don't want to just be a can chaser just so I can have bragging points to say I tried every beer released. Because yeah, like, you're going to start liking it, and you're losing that identity of what is this brewery able to put out that is consistently I sit down and just enjoy a beer.
Right.
Like, it doesn't
Right.
always have to be I had it for these 2 hours. I don't know.
Right. And I think that there's pros and cons to both sides of that, and I do see it from both sides. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I've sort of tried to create a structure where we're doing new beers, but they're most of them are sort of falling into certain categories. And so, okay, so we have the Covet series, which I know you guys were both drinking. So the Covet series is our
Show it off.
fruited new age or kettle sour series. And so same concept. It's same base beer, and we're changing the fruit in it. So whenever you see that label where it says Covet, you know kind of what to expect. Now that fruit is going to change, but you kind of know what you're going to get. Same with the Cat series, it's going to be a hazy IPA.
Yeah.
And then our highly appropriate series. So that's more of a milkshake IPA, but it's not super sweet
Sure.
with fruit. And so the first one that we did, we didn't can. This was actually the first beer that I brewed was Peaches and Cream. First one that we actually canned was pineapple. The next one that will be released next week or the week after is passion fruit. So again, you sort of understand and know what to expect, but it's still new. So it's new without being like the new. It's with some level of familiarity. And I think that there's something to be said for that. And
No, I love that. Yeah.
I was actually talking to a brand manager from another brewery today who reached out to me and was just like, dude, that Krampus cat label is dope. And I was like, thanks. And then we kind of got to talking back and forth. And I really respect this person and what they've been able to do and their insight. And, I was sort of giving him some insight into what I was trying to do. And it felt good to get some affirmation that, the way that I was approaching it was the way that he would have approached it. Considering that, that's all that he does. And I'm doing that and 10,000 other things. So that felt kind of good.
Yeah, I mean, no, I that obviously, yeah, I can't imagine how good that feels because, like you said, your main focus is making the beer, but you're doing these side things, and it's nice now, but obviously, I think down the line, for growth's sakes, you hopefully will have a big enough staff that you don't have to do every hat under the sun.
Right. But right
I,
now, that's what needs to happen.
sure.
It's trim the fat where you can,
Yeah,
be lean, so that we can hopefully make it to the other side of all of this.
I know. Well, let me ask you one thing. So you're talking about creating beers and Krampus Cat. I love the name, and we talked about label art, but we've seen in the news like there's been a lot of issues now with. I think I was talking about last year. Breweries were the highest growing market in terms of new jobs by some crazy percentage. And it grew so crazy. And with so many, eventually names are going to run out. And there's started to be a lot of like, you see very silly names. Like one of the, I don't know how you feel about their beers, but some of the more ridiculous names, always come from Evil Genius and some of the things they put out. But like, we love those names, but like, even naming it, we've seen people start copywriting names of things. And how aware, like when you came up with Krampus Cat, did you have to first do a search, make sure somebody doesn't have this beer? Because
Shit, there's a movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you want to know what I use? I just go on Untapped because I figure if the beer is
yeah,
in existence, it's going to be on Untapped.
it's a good source. Yeah.
There is not actually, so all of our labels, even if all of our beers, I should say, even if they don't go into cans and they're draft only, they have to be submitted to the federal government. However,
Oh,
the federal government doesn't, that that sector doesn't regulate names. Like they don't give a fuck. You can have
Yeah.
the same
They don't
name.
care. Yeah.
You can have
right.
the same name as the brewery that's next door to you, and they don't. They literally don't care. So yeah, I mean, federal government has really they literally don't care about names.
Sure.
That's not to say that another brewery might not care. Names names are tough. I have several friends that have either gone through trying to open a brewery, are opening a brewery, or have opened a brewery, and almost none of them were able to stick with the original name that they intended to name their brewery, because they, check trademarks and all sorts of other
Somebody.
stuff. Yeah, and somebody has it in use somewhere else, and that gets really tough. And I can only imagine how frustrating that must be, when you dream of opening a brewery and you have this name that it's all centered around, and then you come to find out that you can't have that, and then you go for the next one and you can't have that, and
Fuck.
before you know it, you're 15 down on the list, and you're like, what am I even doing this for?
You're
Like,
like, I don't.
do I even believe in this anymore? I'm not really sure. So that can be really frustrating. But as far as naming beers, yeah, I mean, I check Untapped. I look at that, and I use my best judgment too, because we're a small brewery. If I see that there is another brewery in Estonia that has named a beer,
Yeah.
they're what I'm looking for, but that beer hasn't been in production since 2016. Okay, I'm going to use it
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Right.
the likelihood of that ever causing any kind of controversy is slim to none.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually funny you mentioned that because, like, my band, like, we haven't practiced in a year because of COVID and all that, but it's called a Fusion 35. It used to be called a Fusion. And, like, me and the bass player took over for the original members, so it's been around a while. Back in, like, the MySpace days, they got a message from a Fusion in California that was like, hey, you have our name. And they were like, okay, what do you want us to do? Like, we're both nobodies. And they're like, well, you got to change or we have to sue. So they just threw the numbers at the end of it. Again, two, like, bands that really, brass tacks, no one knows who the fuck they are. Even all these years
Yeah.
later, no one's going, oh my god, the California Fusion. They're, like, no one knows who that is. They're probably not even around anymore. So it's still just, like, that kind of funny thing where, like, people can be so overly protective of, like, almost dead stuff where stuff that
Yeah.
doesn't matter anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, what's funny is my buddy's wife is a trademark lawyer, And even when we developed our site, like going through that, the amount of people that will trademark names don't actually plan on doing shit with it. But
Yep.
like you're saying, like that is the I don't
Copyright
know
trolls.
word. I mean, to me, it's just disgusting when you hold on to a name you don't have any intent other than to sell it to someone who, like you said, if you have someone who's a lifelong dream, I want to become a brewer, I have this great name, and some asshole just bought the name with the hopes to sell it to somebody who wants it in the future. I'm not down with that. But then there's like the cases of we have seen, we've reported on here, like, yeah, somebody who's in Indiana and somebody who's in Florida, small breweries, they have the same name, whatever you want to, whatever stout. And one of them just decides, you know what, we're just going to sue just to get that name off, or at least send a cease and desist. I don't get that. There's that famine thinking, like, you can't all thrive together. Like, I don't get that mentality. But at the same time, then there's people we saw who have copyrighted like legit band names or something. Like Guns N' Roses has sued multiple breweries because of somebody using like guns and hops or like something that was basically like they used their artwork and stuff. That I get. Like you're working off the exact like
the likeness of what it is. Yeah.
So it's like there I get it, but it's like you're saying, if you're smaller, you're both coming up. It's like, really? Do you really need to ruffle feathers? Like, can't you all just work towards something?
Yeah. I know from the previous brewery that I was at, they were involved in several disputes with that. One of them was drawn out for years.
Yeah, well,
Some dick with money to burn, just doing it.
I mean, they were coming after Free Will for their name, like after Free Will had been around for several years, and they wanted the name.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. They didn't. It was eventually settled, and we couldn't. I think we couldn't distribute within 100 miles of their brewery. They're in North Carolina. So, I mean, it really...
So you're like, okay, we're good.
Yeah, it really wasn't a huge deal, except that it did come into play a few times when there were some festivals and things that were happening, and then, or like collaborations, and people wanted to have events where like we would do a tap takeover somewhere, and we had to look and see, are we within 100 miles of this other brewery? So, it did happen a few times. There was a beer that we did that had won multiple awards that was called Black Friday, and once it won awards and started to get some notoriety,
did Cypress Hill come after you?
It got on the radar. No, it got on the radar of another brewery that had a beer by the same name, and so we ended up changing it. So Black Friday became Ella, but it sucks. I think, I forget who the two breweries were. I'm pretty sure Dogfish Head was one of them. I can't remember who the other one was, but there were two well-known breweries that both had a beer named the same thing. This is, I don't know, going back probably 6, 7, 8 years ago, and they were aware of it, sent each other a cease and desist, and they ended up brewing a collab together.
That's
and
awesome.
They called it collaboration, not litigation.
That's
awesome.
pretty cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. So there's plenty of examples of breweries that do it right, or
work it out,
or you reach out initially, just friend to friend, even though you don't know each other necessarily, but we're all in this beer industry together. So yeah, you reach out either social media or get an email or something and just say, hey, just so you know, we've been doing a beer by this name since X date, and I don't know how long you guys have been doing this beer, but let's talk about this. And there's so many different things that could come out of that, like whether you come to the agreement that like, hey, yeah, we're in Florida and you're in Wisconsin and we're never going to distribute in the same market, or you say, oh, wow, I didn't realize that. And yeah, there is a chance maybe we'll distribute in the same market. So, okay, let's figure this out. And one of us changes. And, there's so many different ways to go about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of gray areas, and it's funny because one of the topics Jim and I have covered probably more times than we wanted to.
Some could say it's a favorite.
It's definitely a Jim favorite.
Yes,
It's one
it
that
is.
at this point I'm kind of almost tired of.
I have very strong opinions.
But Stone Brewing has been in the news multiple times. Initially, it was with a lawsuit against Keystone when Keystone rebranded and had the key and the stone really big. We ultimately, I think, agreed like, okay, that seemed weird that Keystone did that. It's the only part of the argument we seemed to be weird was, as we said, being very big consumers. We've never been in a beer store, a craft beer store, where we would see a Keystone next to a Stone Brewing and confuse the two. But then again, maybe someone who is super uneducated, they could mix up the two. We put that aside and said, okay, that makes sense. You're kind of going after someone bigger. We didn't care too much about Keystone, even though that's Jim's go-to cheap beer.
God damn you, I care. That is my summer beer. That is my vacation beer.
Jim, I told you need to stick with Beast. What are you talking about?
No, my dad
God.
drinks the Beast. No, my dad drinks the
God.
Beast. He drinks the Beast. I drink the Keystone.
My grandfather drank Beast Ice. Oh, God.
My dad is 78, so it fits the bill.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
But if you know him, we apologize. But like the way that, what was his name, Jim? I know you know his
Greg.
name.
Greg Cook?
Yep. It seemed to come off semi-pretentious the way he was writing about it. And we're like, whatever, he's very passionate. We get it. But then we've seen recently he's been going after other breweries, and oh man, I'm going to screw this up. Was it
Sawstone, I think?
Sawstone.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they're a small brewery, and it seems like they're going after them now, saying like you're using. So it's almost like they're saying like if you have the word stone in any part of your name, that's a no-go, and we're going to come after you. We got the Keystone. We felt like this was more punching down. And you, of all people, know, like, obviously, if somebody came at you and came up with a brewery like, hey, Bare Naked or something, some variation, like, how would that make you feel? And do you have any opinions on that situation?
Well, so funny enough, so most of my family doesn't drink craft beer. I should say most of my dad's side of the family doesn't drink craft beer at all. Most of them really don't drink, or they definitely don't drink beer. So I got this random text message, it's like maybe in August, from one of my aunts, and it was so cute. She's like, hey, Hannah, I know that you work for Naked Brewing, but I have these coupons for Naked Wine, and I was wondering if you know anything about their wines, since, and so like she totally thought we were the same company, which I thought was so freaking cute. And like, how do I tell my aunt that? Like, oh no, honey, we're not at all the same. But that's a really great example, right? And like, it didn't even like, yes, I know Naked Wines, but it didn't even like, I don't know why it didn't cross my mind that could ever be something that would be confused. But that's kind of a good example, right? Like, they're a pretty big company. Now, granted, as a brewery, we've been incorporated since 2010, so we've actually been around longer and have held that name longer than the winery, but they're way bigger with a lot more money. So if they really wanted to fight, like, they could, but they don't, because what are they going to get? Like, why?
Right.
There's no point, because you're going to
It's
confuse
just bad PR at that point.
Right, you're going to confuse one 60-year-old aunt. Okay, cool. Like, whatever.
Never underestimate the normies. Maybe we're just all too involved in this.
So I don't know. I mean, if somebody were to come after me for like a beer name or something, I don't I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I get it to an extent because if it's something that is super ingenuitive and just kind of obscure and somebody
Yeah.
else randomly comes up with it or has it, you do maybe sort of wonder and go, did you randomly come up with that? Or did you kind of steal that?
Yeah.
Or is it like, wow, that was really obscure. And so because that name is so prominently different, and now you're coming up with such a prominently different name, are those two potentially going to be confused because they are so different? Are people going to assume that they're the same? Like, so there are instances where I do 100% understand it and
Yeah.
understand protecting your brand and what you've built. And this kind of goes along with the IP theft thing, right? So like you have companies that have developed branding,
Hmm.
imaging, names, color schemes, all of these different things, and that you have another company that comes along and says, haha, I think that this is going to be funny. I'm going to take this and I'm going to change the name from being, instead of Fruit Loops, you make it,
Loop Froops.
Loop Froops. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like, really?
Yeah.
First of all, that's just lazy. And second of all, you just hijacked that.
Exactly.
Like, what are you doing, man? Like, that's
Third off, that's her new
just
channel name.
I mean, no, I fully get that, and that's why we said the thing with stone is weird. Is stone
stone. It's
itself?
just a
It's
word.
yeah,
My
like
fucking
if
fireplace is stone. Like,
exactly, and that's what drove me. If they were the fucking Doozelmites, and somebody was like that, I'm using that. That
yeah.
seems more obscure. You're using stone, and yes, Saul stone, and there could be a reason behind that, or like you could use stone in a million different ways, and it just. I hope that's not a pattern, and I hope that's something they're not pursuing hard against them. But it sucks for us because, like I said, we kind of had our bad taste in our mouth the way Greg had handled the initial PR with the Keystone,
Mm-hmm.
and then this happened, and we're like, ugh. And it doubly sucks because we really like the beers from there. So it's kind of like
Yeah.
and we're not like one of those, you have to now boycott people, but it's one of those where it's just like, don't make it about that. Like, you know,
I
I don't
am genuinely interested to understand how Stone can trademark and fight with the word stone because I always thought that common words like that couldn't be trademarked. But I mean, I don't know enough. I'm not a legal expert by any.
Yeah,
so
unless it's
when
within the industry or something. Maybe there's some weird caveat there. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I
well,
don't
no.
know.
So the interesting thing, the reason they were able to fight Keystone, and I only noticed because I talked to my buddy's wife, uh, with the Keystone, because Stone was so prominent and the font was semi close. There was like a likeness issue and
Okay.
the display of the font. The word itself wasn't so much issue versus how it
The
was displayed
imaging.
on the can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas, like I said, that's where with the Saul Stone, I'm like, where is their standing? Because it's not like there's like Saul is really small and Stone is huge. It's Saul Stone. It's one
It
word.
is one word, and I could understand if like their logo was a gargoyle. I
Yeah,
could like I
Right.
exactly.
could totally understand Stone going, guys, come on. Like,
Yeah.
okay, we've already done this. We're not doing this again. But yeah.
It's odd. It makes me sad just to see it because it's like you. I'll be
They make good
corny
beer.
here.
It's like
I'll,
shit.
no, but I'll be corny. I'll say literally the Batman thing. It's like you live long enough to be the good guy, or you become the villain, and
Yeah.
you don't want to see that because they always were such a advocate for craft
Craft beer.
breweries,
Yeah. Independent. Yeah. Like
Right.
and
craft beer. Yeah.
and it's like, oh man, like I don't want to see that. So hopefully that doesn't go down anyway. But I was very curious from your take where like what you thought about that. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we all sort of are on the same same page, and I don't really have any more insight.
Yeah.
Now, Bri,
Yes.
social experiment time.
Okay.
We go out, we buy a little brew kit, do a little press release out there, call ourselves Buttstone Brewery. Do they come after us?
I think they will, Jim. I think they definitely will.
I just want to have every beer publication have to write Buttstone 1,000 times.
We're just going to add a lot of salt to beer and call it kidney stones, and they're going to enjoy it, and that's it.
There you go.
Copyright that. We'll be rich.
Now, speaking of breweries, one thing I was very curious, Hannah, I know you've already done collaborations, and I was curious, like, if there's any ones you can share with us of any breweries that are like you would really love moving forward to collaborate with.
So I think that there's a couple different perspectives on doing collaborations. One is there's like the breweries that I'm like, man, I would love to do a collaboration with them because I just want to learn from them. I want to brew with them. Like they're a wealth of knowledge. I've idolized them. I really admire them. I look up to them. And then there's the breweries that I want to do collaborations with just because they're my homies. And like, I just want to fucking brew with them.
Yeah.
And so I think there's, there's two different sides to that. And
yeah.
that could be a Venn diagram where, they overlap each other.
Sure. Yeah.
Where you can have your breweries that you really look up to, but they're also your homies.
Yeah.
So, for the short term, collaborations are a little bit harder to do right now because of COVID. But in 2021, there's definitely a couple breweries that I would love to be able to collab with, and I hope I get the opportunity to. Bond Place would be one of them. Sam and Josh and Ryan, like they're my homies, but Sam especially. I love that dude. And they just produce such solid beer. And I would actually say that they're a brewery that I also really look up to as well. So they sort of are in that center shared portion of the Venn diagram. And, I don't know. Bond Place is definitely one.
All right.
I would love to brew with Love City. Again, because I really admire what Kevin and Melissa have built as a company and as a couple. I adore them as humans. I adore them as business people. I adore Kevin as a brewer. But also they make solid beer. And, like I had mentioned earlier, Kevin and I have known each other since sophomore year of college. So there's, a good relationship there. There's Forest and Maine would be on my list too.
Okay.
They're pretty high up on my list of breweries that I probably will never actually collab with, which is not true because I did collab with them when I was at Free Will. So
okay.
I have actually collabed with them. I just haven't collabed with them.
Door.
Just not.
Yeah, I just haven't collabed with them on my own.
And let's not forget in 2022, the Guinness collaboration.
Oh, yes. Yes.
The Genesee collaboration. That's what we really need.
So that's actually not unattainable. That is not unattainable.
Oh.
There have been other breweries that have done it. I had been asking to do a cream ale at Free Will since the day that I started. And I was always told, it'll never sell. Like, we're never going to do that. Okay, guys, fine, whatever. But, like, I would still drop that hint constantly. Right. And I will never forget where I was, what I was doing, the moment that this happened. John came up to me. I was CIP in a tank, and I was bent over hooking up hoses and stuff to this pump. Like, John comes up beside me, and he's like, hey, I'm gonna need you to write me a cream ale recipe. And I did like the fucking bend and snap, like from Legally Blonde, like what? It was like, I'm sorry, one more time? It was, I'm gonna need you to write me a cream ale recipe. And I go, oh my God, it's happening. And I was like, oh my God. Seriously? And he's like, yeah, can you just write it? And I was like, I'll have it on your desk by the end of the day. And he's like, I mean, you don't have to, you could take if you, I was like, nope, it'll be on your desk by the end of the day. And my whole goal with that was I wanted it to be like Jenny Cream. Like that was my thing. So that was really my inspiration. And when we did it and released it, I posted about it and I made a reference to Genesee Cream Ale. And then they responded to me and then they started following me on Instagram. And I was like, my life is complete.
There you go.
I have now made it. That's all I needed.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm necessarily on the scale yet and have enough of a hype reputation behind me to warrant them wanting to do a collab with me. But you never know. It could happen.
Everyone write to Genesee and say, do it.
Yeah, it could happen. We'll see.
Have a third beer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty well known amongst the industry and people that cream ale is my favorite. So imagine how excited I was when I went to Naked. So they gave me free creative control over everything. They said, carte blanche, you can do whatever you want. You can 86 any recipes you want. You can keep any recipes that you want. You can change any recipes you want. You have free reign. The only beer that we ask that you continue to produce that is always on tap is our cream ale. And I go, fucking done.
Of course, yeah. You're like, yeah.
Now, they did tell me that I had control to tweak and change the recipe. And I did. To make it a little bit more in line with what I felt was appropriate for the style. But I did really like the cream ale recipe that was already there. So I just sort of modified it a little bit. But
Nice.
yeah, so that was kind of cool. Like, okay, I definitely landed someplace cool. And we have this weird cross section of beer consumers where our cream ale is our number one selling beer. Please name me another brewery that's the case, because I don't think you're going to find one.
Nope.
We're in this weird cross section of craft beer consumers. I'm not complaining about it. But
that's one of the things we mentioned earlier. Like, everyone is so just IPA heavy, and to see a cream ale, like to drink that, and a lot of people, cream ale is an interesting brew in general because of the way. I'll tell you, the way it's brewed, it is so different than a typical ale and everything, and it's so easy to drink. Like, to me, that reads as, I don't generally love the term session beers, but like, I could sit there and drink that all day.
It's called the lawnmower beer. Like, that's what it's called.
Yeah.
Cream ale is the lawnmower beer, and it's called that for a reason, because it's what you can drink in the summer when you're mowing your lawn. When you're done mowing your lawn, you can have it for breakfast, you can have it for dinner, you can have it whenever you want.
It's a very accessible beer. I guess that's the best way I can describe it.
It's very approachable for anybody. It's beer flavored beer.
Exactly. Yeah. And that would be pretty awesome, though. See a naked Genesee.
I know.
So let me ask you this. You mentioned, the Krampus Cat you just announced today. Mm-hmm. What else can we expect from Naked, or what else can you speak about that we can expect from the future of Naked? And obviously, with the caveat, we know with COVID going on and not knowing what the future holds, but are there any exciting plans coming forward?
I mean, I can tell you what's going to be released between now and the end of the year. And beyond that, we're still sort of working on solidifying some plans beyond the end of the year, because we're kind of trying to figure out what next year is going to hold for us, for the industry.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. But yeah, we have highly appropriate passion fruit coming out.
Ooh.
So that's a hazy IPA with lactose and passion fruit and hopped with Azaka and Mosaic. It's a subtle fruit character, but it's definitely there. But it's a nice subtle fruit character, and the lactose is not very much, so it only contributes a tiny tinge of sweetness. But again, it's not if you are not lactose intolerant but have issues with some of these beers that have a lot of lactose in it, this will not be a beer that you'll have an issue with.
Okay.
We have a bourbon barrel aged imperial stout coming out. That's called Hello Starshine. I'm really excited for that label too. Gabby actually took watercolor to paper and did that label, and it's beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah, it's super cool. And then a beer that I am super excited about, brewing it next week. I'm actually brewing it with my brother, so he's going to come out and brew with me. And it's called Pulsating Cosmic Soup. And
Interesting.
yeah, it's a, a hazy double IPA with Galaxy, Comet, and Southern Cross, as well as hibiscus, and it's also going to get glitter in it.
What? That's crazy.
Yeah. So I feel like if there ever was going to be a beer that was going to have glitter, it's going to be this beer. So there's a whole super rad story that goes into it, and it really was just like this organic back and forth conversation between my brother and I that came about. And it all started with a fun like science experiment that he was doing with his two little kiddos at home one day, and it involved food coloring and milk. And if you take milk and like put it in a saucer and you drop some food coloring, and then you take dish detergent and you drop the dish detergent, it makes these really cool starburst like tie-dye looking things.
Ooh.
Super trippy.
Yeah.
But it's super cool. And my brother was just talking about, he was showing me all these different pictures of these things that he had done. And my brother's real artsy, and he's a hippie like me. And so he was just, we were just vibing off of each other with this. And he was like, yeah, it's time for me to go feed the kids some lunch. And he was like, yeah, come on, kids, time for your pulsating cosmic soup. And I was like, that would make a dope beer name. And he goes, I knew you were going to latch on to that. And it just sort of snowballed from there. And we just kind of went with it. And one of the pictures that he sent me of this science experiment that he was doing, it's going to become the label. And we collaborated sort of on this idea of what this beer was going to be. And I was like, I feel like we have to have glitter in it. And he was like, hell yeah. So, so I'm really excited about it. My brother's just a super cool human. This might be the beer that I'm most excited. Of all the beers that I've ever brewed, this might be the beer that I'm most excited to brew. Because it's super special to brew with my brother. So,
well, I'll speak for Jim. I know we are going to be excited to try that, so I can't wait to hear about the release. And
it's going to be our New Year's beer. So
awesome.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah, it'll be released either New Year's Eve or the day before, depending upon how that works out. But yeah, so another reason that I think glitter just deserves to be in there.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Party beer.
No, I like that. But yeah, so let me ask you, when you brew a beer like that, do you have like an ABV in mind? Like, do you know the range you want it to be at? I know it can change as you're brewing, and you just set a general like, it's between here and here, or is it, do you try and hit a specific number?
Yeah. So for like the cat series, I really wanted that to be 6.6. Don't ask me why. I just really wanted all of those beers to be 6.6. So I developed that recipe, so it would be 6.6. For things like pulsating cosmic soup, because of the style of it being a double IPA or hazy double IPA, 8% or above is where I think it should be, somewhere between 8 and 10%. So as I developed the recipe, that sort of dictated where that ABV would be.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
make it 15%, send people to the stars.
Right, yeah. Yeah. So things like the cream ale, that comes in at 5.3, and I was, you know, I wanted that beer to be somewhere between five and, low fives. So
Sure. Yeah, to keep
5.3
it
was good.
that drinkability.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you're saying about how when you're brewing it, because after trying both these beers, and we didn't we
I know
just
we didn't
drank
even talk
as
about
we're going.
covenant.
I know we didn't even get a chance to talk about Covet, but this is the pineapple mango. What's interesting is after I finished this one, I looked and I noticed this was 6.9%. I
It
actually
is?
felt like that went down smoother than Way to My Heart.
No shit.
But
Interesting.
my caveat to that is, me personally, I think I like the flavors and Way to My Heart better, but the Covet which seemed a little less tart and it went down smoother. Like I felt like I didn't notice the alcohol, which is one of those we would always describe as it's dangerous because it can sneak up on you because you'll be drinking and you'll be like, that's not bad, and then 6.9, it'll get to you. Whereas Way to My Heart is 5.3.
Yeah.
So there's a pretty big difference there. And, I'm sure it's a very odd question to ask, but of those two, do you have a favorite between those two?
Um, Not really. They're so different from each other.
Yep.
Um, so no, I don't know that I really have a preference between those two. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think I really have a preference between those two. Sorry.
No,
Really
no, no,
boring
no.
answer.
I don't expect. Here's the deal. I can't imagine like you said, you're brewing these beers.
Picking a child.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like you're literally. How do you choose? Because they are so different. If they were a little bit closer, but even though they're both sours, with milk sugar, that's where they end, as far as I can tell. Because like I
Yeah, and
said,
they're not even produced the same way. For being two sour ales, they weren't even produced the same way. So,
yeah,
there's so many differences between the two. Um, yeah,
yeah. I mean, putting aside just flavor profiles, the mouthfeel between the two was drastically different.
hmm
As I mentioned, the Way to My Heart felt like I was like, why? Wow, this is creamy sour. I'd never had that before. Whereas the Covet was maybe a little more closer to what I'm used to, but there was a thickness to it, and I can't say creamy. I don't know the right verbiage here, but like
You know,
there was
just
something.
a fuller mouthfeel. Yeah,
Yeah,
yep,
yeah,
yeah,
and yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I might have liked the flavor a little more, but I love how drinkable the Covet, like the drinkable, just went down way too easy.
you know what's weird? When I was thinking in my head, I was like, if you're a person who like fucking hates champagne or something like that, like this could almost be like a mimosa replacement with like the citrus, but like the
totally.
alcohol and the carbonation that was there. Because I was just like, I didn't want to like go full like explain to a 5-year-old, and it's like, all right, imagine you poured champagne into like a high C twister or something like that, but as I was drinking this, I was like, man, this is just really that kind of like early day all day kind of. And both of your, like, I'm the big sour guy, and both of these beers, the sour was really understated from that usual like in your face tartness that you get with sours. So it was like impressive the way how both of them infused so many more flavors into there while you're still drinking it and going, oh yeah, this is a sour, but not like getting like punched in the face with it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not enamel removing from your teeth.
yeah, yeah. And as Jim said, Covet to me almost reads as more, I think morning, I think afternoon, I think sun. Whereas Way to My Heart, I think that's dessert all the way. Like it's a perfect nighttime, like just two different times of day
Yeah,
almost
yeah,
as I'm drinking it.
yeah.
But
Yeah, I don't disagree with those assessments at all. And I wouldn't
She's
say
like,
that
yeah, I'm
that's.
pretty great.
she's like, yeah, I do. She's like, I do a pretty good
Yeah, they are
job.
perfect beers, aren't they?
I mean, no, I mean that exactly what you guys said is sort of some of the thought process that I had in designing these beers, and having the. I always struggle on how to actually phrase this, the foresight, but it's not even foresight because it's not the sense that I'm using. Um, but the foresight to understand the ingredients that I'm using and how they play together and what that will result in. That for me is both fun and super intimidating at the same time, but it's really fun. Because
Nice.
it's taking all these different things and going, okay, I've never done things in this combination before. I can't say with 100% certainty that I know how this is going to turn out. Using best practices and all my empirical evidence of things that I've used and done before, this is how I think it's going to turn out. So when it turns out that way, or turns out that way and better, it's sort of like oh, okay. I guess I can do
Nice.
this.
Yeah. It's a very good. Just pat yourself on the back moment. You know what you did.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well. Once again, we want to say, Hannah, we truly, truly appreciate you coming on. But before we go, we always want to say, we have all the links below from your site, from your Twitter. But is there anything else you want to plug or that we should be adding to YouTube or to iTunes?
So we have 2 locations. We have our location in Huntington Valley on Buck Road. And then we also have a secondary tap room in Bristol Borough. It's about a block and a half from the marina. So it is right downtown in historical Bristol. Super walkable, lots of other local establishments to visit while you're there. And that's a really cool location. The inside tap room just has a really cool vibe to it. So yeah, I would definitely encourage people to check out Bristol as well. Bristol location is open on Sundays and our Buck Road location is not. So if you're looking to try to get some beers on a Sunday, you can check out that space too. Definitely, any and all support that people are willing to give us, any other small businesses right now is hugely appreciated. COVID has definitely done a number on small businesses. It's done a number on the economy in general, but small businesses are really hurting. So any and all support that you can give is hugely appreciated. And that doesn't even have to just be monetary. It could be in the format of sharing social media posts. If you've previously purchased beer from us or purchased a product from another small business, posting about it in any specialty groups that you may be part of, anything like that. It's appreciated. we're all in this together, but we're all trying to survive too. And I'm hopeful that someday I'll actually be able to raise a pint with you guys in person and not over Zoom.
I would love to play some Rock'em Sock'em Robots against you down that tap room you guys have.
All right.
No, I can't. Yeah, I can't wait for that day either. But yeah, as Hannah said, especially if you're in PA, make the trip out, get some of their beers. They're great. And as she said at the beginning, the cans are available. Get them. They look great. They taste great. And there's no excuse. Just support local all the way. Hannah, once again, we really want to thank you. We truly appreciate you coming on. And in the future, we can't wait to drink with you in person.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on, guys.
Thanks again for coming on.
So with that, everyone, we say have a good night and cheers.
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 Awesome. All right, Jim, so what questions do we have today?
All right. So, first up from Game Whisperer Dean. In the 90s, you want to make a mixtape to impress your date, but you only have game soundtracks. What tunes are on the tape? Ooh la la.
Dates and game soundtracks generally don't they don't flow, Jim. I had a whole thing in my head when you start talking 90s mixtapes because I might have made it one or two. But, I mean, if you want to impress them, you hit them with some Bloody Tears from Castlevania, or I guess it depends on the mood you're trying to set. But, yeah, I don't know. That's weird. Like, oh, you know what? It's 90s. You want to get them in the mood. You're getting ready to go out to the club. You're going to hit them up with some Killer Instinct.
All right, you're going that route.
Yeah.
So, all right, I'm going to
Because
go.
don't try to make anything fucking romantic. The only romantic shit you might be able to do is like Donkey Kong Country, fucking the aqua, or what the hell is it
Oh
called?
no, bro! You throw in that aqua level from Donkey Kong Country. You
Yeah.
throw some of those sappier tracks from Final Fantasy VI and from Chrono Trigger.
You got some candles lit, you tell me?
That's fucking right. You light some goddamn candles and some goddamn you you get your finest Yankee candle out, your cinnamon raspberry flavored fucking
That's
candle,
right.
and you fucking turn on that goddamn love song from Final Fantasy VI, and you're gonna get you some. God damn it.
That's right. And in Jim's case, he just closes the door by himself.
That's goddamn right. You're gonna find that fold between two goddamn cushions, and you're gonna go to town. God damn it.
Oh, damn it, Jim. Damn it, damn it.
See, this is why we did this after Hannah was on.
I hate you, Jim.
Next up, from G to the next level. Since Thanksgiving is upon us, and I hope I'm not too late, you're not too late, we are. What are your favorite foods to have on Thanksgiving, and do you have a special holiday beer to top it off with? Cheers and happy Thanksgiving, guys.
Good question. Thanks, G. I mean, honestly, I'm one of those, like, I like it all on Thanksgiving. I'm not a picky, like, I only want this or that. And I know that's generic. I only wait to Thanksgiving. Like, I don't have turkey, like actual cooked turkey or like all the stuffings and shit. I don't have it except for at Thanksgiving. So I kind of like, that's my fill of all that shit. One of my favorite things to do, and if you're from PA, you probably know about Wawa, is they have a gobbler sandwich. And so with my leftovers, I usually use the Hawaiian King rolls, and I make little gobbler sliders. So you got the turkey with the gravy, the stuffing, the cranberry sauce. Put it all together and make yourself a little sandwich. That shit's delicious. But I'm also like one of those weird, well, it's probably not weird. I'm sure a lot of people do it. I like all the little sides. Like I'll have the olives, the deviled eggs, the whatever, like little just snacky things before. But yeah, because I don't have it any other time of year, I gobble all that shit up.
Yeah, I mean, same here for the most part with all that. You know what I fucking pig out on, and I never have it at all for the rest of the year? Goddamn green bean casserole.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
I will eat half the tray because it's a thing that no one else wants really but me. But there's always that one family member who makes it, and then I see it and I just go mine,
Yes.
mine.
Especially with the fried onions.
Oh, like you're gonna do it without fried onions? Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, that and Monica makes like a pineapple stuffing, like there's it's stuffed mushrooms, like all this shit that I don't have regularly.
Right.
Yeah, I told Monica the problem is we didn't have anyone over, but we made food like we did, and we had leftovers for like friggin' 3.5, 4 days, and I finally like as of last night I was like, I can't do it anymore.
Just toss it.
I'm like, just toss out the rest. But man, like I'm not gonna miss it. But then when the next Thanksgiving comes around, I'll gobble it all right up. And as far as a beer that I paired with it, I always use Thanksgiving as my barometer for my first Mad Elf. That's almost always when I have my first one. Like I bought a 6-pack of it, and that's usually my nighttime beer. Throughout the day, I had a Lancaster pumpkin pie beer, the pumpkin ale. But yeah, at night, I'd start doing my Mad Elves.
Yeah, we never host Thanksgiving, so my Thanksgiving beer, I mean, I guess I could always bring something, but
Jim doesn't do that.
come on now. So my Thanksgiving beer always turns out to be whatever's on tap at the house of choice.
Like Sketties.
Sketty beer would be delicious.
Damn it, Jim.
All right, next up from Alex Perez. Going along with my fast food question from a few weeks ago, what are your favorite sit-down restaurants, table service, and your go-to orders?
Wait. Damn. Sit-down restaurant.
Your favorite sit-down restaurant and your go-to order there.
I mean,
you motherfucker.
There's two. That's infinite. I mean, because then you could do levels. Like, you talking chain restaurants or you talking legit nice places? Because there's a big difference there.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably like an easy cop out, but I'm gonna go with my most nostalgic, and it was back in my pothead days. And
Sketties.
No, goddamn, it's not Sketties, but back in the day, like mid to late 2000s, you could go to Applebee's, and that's for me and all my friends who were smokers. We'd go there, and you could get an appetizer sampler for like $6. So you could get 3,000 calories of food for $6 goddamn dollars. And we would just sit there all stoned, smoking cigarettes and downing all these gigantic platters of food. So that was the go-to in the heyday there.
If I'm going places like that, I will always go. I worked at multiple fast food, or they're not fast food, sit down restaurants. I worked at Friendly's, Applebee's, a bunch of other places. Friendly's Turkey Club Super Melt with you replace the goddamn disgusting Thousand Island dressing with ranch dressing in the sandwich with fries and the sundae. That is just a complete perfect meal. But fancier places, I'd probably go somewhere like in Philly. We have this place called Alma de Cuba. I love Cuban food, sit down restaurant, and I always go with smoked marlin tacos and then the flank steak with black beans and rice. That's kind of my go-to there.
There you go. Fancy pants.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have a fancy restaurant we go to enough to pick one. We're scum. But also from him, and happy Thanksgiving to you all. Have a healthy one, fellow patrons. Thanks, man. You too.
Thanks, bud. Thanks, Alex.
Next up from Burned Retinas. Movies. Also check out his Battletoads review. He just released today. It's a good one. Movies about boxing seem to be a bigger draw than actual boxing. Films about mixed martial arts still seem niche or just forgettable. Do MMA movies ever need to be a thing? It's just pro wrestling at that point.
The problem with MMA movies and being the resident MMA fanatic, the problem is, yes, like boxing, you can get away with a certain amount of this mystique because even in like Rockies and
because it's always fixed.
Well, it's that, but it's also you can see like in real boxing, you can almost sometimes see cases where guys get knocked down or get back up, whatever. In the MMA movies, they're getting 17 head kicks in a row. They get every goddamn submission under the sun. They're getting slammed. They're getting multiple crosses to the face, uppercut. Like they're getting hit with all the big shots that would legit end a real fight. And any person that has just the hintiest hint would know those MMA movies are generally fake. And the other problem is every MMA movie, the dude is that atypical MMA douchebag. And it just promotes a stereotype that in boxing movies, my favorite movie of all time is Rocky, because Rocky is not an atypical boxer. Like, he's an underdog. There's a story behind it. There's not been an MMA movie where the guy isn't just some kind of leveled off douche, even if he is an underdog in whatever fight he's going for. They're always kind of played by the same atypical type of guys, and that's a hard mold because that's what you think of when, unfortunately, you think of MMA fighters. And having been in those gyms enough, that's not what those people are like. There are some douchebags like that, but the movies always portray them the same way every time. So, yeah.
And that's why the best MMA movie is Here Comes the Boom, starring Kevin Smith.
I hate you, Jim. I actually am, interestingly enough. It's a good show, but it does have the problems I just mentioned. It's called Kingdom on Netflix. My brother told me about it, and it's a good show, but the characters in it, like I said, some of them have that atypical MMA fighter look and feel to them, and you're kind of like, oh, this is a bit much.
Hey, Warrior's a pretty good movie. So
Warrior, actually,
that surprised me.
Really
that surprised
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also Tom Hart. Fuck, I always forget the other guy's name.
Tom shit,
Hardy's
yeah.
brother. He's in so many things, and he's actually really good.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but yeah.
But Tom Hardy's brother. That's probably the best MMA. Well, it is the best MMA movie.
Here Comes the Boom.
Shut up, Jim.
All right, and last up from Eric Glowacki. Are you guys excited for the return of the McRib?
You know, it never did anything for me. It's one of those ones that I never understood the hype. I think it's just the sauce that tastes good about that. Maybe back in the day it used to be really good, which I didn't have it. I had it when it got its resurgence in like the late 2000, like 2009, maybe 10. I remember trying it then, and I was like, oh, it's meh. So honestly, it may be something I just happened to really if I really want to be out and try, but I'm not going out of my way, so I really couldn't give two shits about it.
The McRib is fucking bullshit. It's the most overrated goddamn fast food goddamn item out there. Here's our overrated, underrated for the week. The McRib. It's fucking overrated. It's just goddamn. Look, I'm a fan of the shit food. My body's made up of like 95% shit food. And even I look at the McRib and I taste it and I go, what is wrong with you people? Why is there this much hype? Is it the you can't have this? Like, yeah, the onions and pickle are good, and it's just fucking mealy fucking leather slapped on with like some decent barbecue sauce. Like,
It's the bar. I have to imagine it's just the bar. It can't be obviously it can't be the meat. Like that's the only thing I can guess. I don't know. I don't get it.
It's the limited nature of it. That's the only reason there's any mystique around it. If it was around all year long, no one would care.
And Jim, you were someone who would frequently get from 7-Eleven. What was it? The pork flavored or
I
the
will
rib flavored?
I will take a goddamn 7-Eleven rib flavored beef patty or fucking their imitation pulled pork over a goddamn McRib any goddamn day. And it's funny because in the group chat they're like, wait, we were talking about McDonald's and they're like, wait, you'll eat a fillet of fish but you don't like the McRib? And I go, look, the fillet of fish at least has the texture of what it's supposed to be. The McRib is
disgusting too.
You throw enough tartar sauce on there.
I once again, I think McDonald's as a whole is the most overhyped of all the fast food chains. It used to be something. There's never been a time where I've had it and I've gone, man, this was enjoyable.
Man, I'm so glad I got anything besides fries at McDonald's. Right, I never really say that either, but. Yeah, I mean, as far as all their sandwiches go, they're bottom tier. But yeah.
Even the Shamrock Shake, which people jerk off over, I don't get because I've had that, and Wawa makes a way better mint shake.
Oh yeah,
like it's like you hit the nail on the head. It's the limited. Like you make anything limited, yeah, people are gonna like it. Jim, actually, that would have been a perfect thing for you in college and high school if you did want to get any dates. You're like, ladies, I'm limited. You can only get this for a short time.
Short, limited time. Much like the downstairs, what you're about to experience. Short and limited.
Damn it, Jim. I would be curious, like, if somebody was... My only guess is there's some nostalgia because the barbecue sauce, even like you're saying, it's not great. It's okay. I don't know.
I mean, I guess it's okay for like trashy fast food, but yeah, it's more of hype and mystique over quality. So yeah, fuck the McRib. I don't care when it comes back. Give me my bacon mushroom melt for the love of God. Why does that never come back enough? But the McRib's always around like 3 times a year.
Wendy's, step up your game, man. Get that shit back.
Yeah. The breakfast is decent. It's okay.
Haven't tried it yet.
It's not bad. The maple chicken sandwich, it's solid.
Dude, you know who has banging ass breakfast?
Taco Bell?
They're not bad. I do like them. Chick-fil-A.
Oh, dude, come on now. The God tier sandwich, you get the chicken, egg, and cheese on a bagel and add bacon to it. Mwah. Mwah.
No, but like Chick-fil-A was already like, I was getting tired of it because my wife really liked it. And I'm sorry, every time you go to Chick-fil-A, you spend way too much money. You do finish your meal, and you're always still just a little bit hungry. And
you always have to get a side of nuggies, even after your like fries.
Yeah,
you need some nuggies to finish it off.
And the fries there, like they're not that good. The sauces you dip them in are always what's a good thing. I love the texture. But the flavor of them is always meh. But like their chicken sandwiches are great. Their nuggets are great. But yeah, their breakfast, man, it hits a different way.
Yeah, their breakfast. Oh, the breakfast burrito too. That is a damn good burrito they got going on there.
They had a breakfast burrito. Now
yes, they do.
Get there tomorrow morning.
Yep. No, it's good. So nice. Yeah, that rounds out the Patreon questions. So thanks to you once again, everyone.
No, we really appreciate it. Thank you for supporting us. And with that, we're going to close out the episode, even though we kind of already did. But till next time, guys, make sure you get those questions in the gym. And have a good night and cheers.
Cheers.